Okay, good. I see Commissioner Hoag here. Let's I will call the meeting the February 6th meeting of the Charter Revision Commission to order. Please stand and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
Allegiance
the
to
flag
the flag
of the United
United
States
States
of
of
America
America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
liberty,
and
justice for all.
Okay, thank you all. Let me share my screen just so we're all on the same page here. Literally. Chairman's update. I have a couple things to share. First thing is Commissioner Biagini has resigned. She called first selectman week and a half ago, I guess, and spoke to him about being on the commission and other issues, and then subsequently called me, and then earlier this week she had officially resigned. So I've spoken to the first selectman about replacing her. We don't necessarily need to have 8 people, so it looks like right now, given the fact that there wasn't a strong bench, if you will, backing us all up, I think the position right now is that we will remain a commission of 7. So that is the position going forward, unless anyone has any recommendations. Certainly, we would consider that. When I spoke to Bill the other day, I thought it might be a little tough getting someone indoctrinated kind of a couple months in, but listen, if we have the right person, we can certainly have that discussion. So feel free to share that with me if you're so inclined. That will also mean that we would need to elect a new vice chairman. Of course, the agenda was. I didn't want to put the news on the agenda. I wanted to make sure that I told you all in person. Well, as in person as this is anyway tonight, about Commissioner Biagini's resignation. So the next agenda we will have to vote for a new vice chairman. So if anyone is interested, please reach out to me and we can have that discussion. I want to make sure that I can see everyone because I kind of expected. Oh, there's Ms. Vitale.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm doing well. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh. For those of you who don't know, that is Selectman Vitale. Thank you for joining tonight. Our other 2 select persons are not here yet, so maybe we can jump really quickly into our backup and talk about the meeting minutes of January 7th. These meeting minutes we discussed last time, and they have been updated. I looked quickly, but the updates that I had been anticipating were added to here. Do I have a motion to put the Charter Revision Commission regular meeting draft minutes before us?
I move.
Well, just a note, Mary had sent a potential question on it.
I thought that was on the 21st meeting. Is that not accurate?
It seems to be one comment on each minutes.
Okay.
I'll second the motion just so we can discuss it. I
Yeah,
have
let's
a
put it before us.
comments
Yes.
too.
What was your comment on the 7th meeting,
Right.
Commissioner Hoag?
My question was, well, I'll just read it. Similar to the golf commission, is this item on the library trustees including the ability to be reappointed after a 1-year absence? I thought we had agreed that was
Sorry, what number is under so we can get to?
1017B.
And I'm sorry, and the question is,
I don't know if it's just in general or if just the idea that, you can't get reappointed is what I think it said. And I'm trying to find out if you are off for a year, can you get reappointed? I don't know if I thought we had discussed that for the Golf Commission. I don't know if we followed along to the next commission or if the minutes are fine and just in general, if that's a
my
thing.
my recollection is that it's already I thought it was already stated in the charter in that way, so it wouldn't be in here, but hold on. So do you think the minutes are erroneous in how they're stated?
I didn't have a chance to look at the recording, so that's so I can't say for sure,
Is
but
my recollection correct that it was the Golf Commission that uniquely had that provision,
right.
right?
There were just if I can, there are two issues here. So the
Yeah.
Golf Commission, there was a long waiting period between
I think it was
terms, the ability to be like a
years.
5 year, and
5
we
years,
discussed and
that's right.
agreed to reduce it to 1 year. On the
Right.
Library Commission, the recommendation from the Board of Library Trustees was that rather than have a 6 year term and limited to 1 6 year term, that the terms be reduced to 3 years, but be allowed to be appointed again for a second consecutive term for a total of 6 years, at which time I believe they would not be allowed to be reappointed. That's essentially the discussion that I remember we were having on both topics.
I mean, the current charter says that you can serve a 6 year term, and can be reappointed cannot be reappointed until after a lapse of 1 year. So it is that way now. So I guess
Okay. All right, never
our
mind then. Okay, that's done.
okay.
So
Any-
just to clarify, no change then, right, Mary? That's what we just agreed. No change to the
No
minutes.
change.
Okay,
No, because it's in the charter already.
perfect. Okay.
And then it wasn't a minutes question as much as a question about how this is worded. The 6.3B vacancies on the BOS. It says a position on the BOS isn't considered vacant until selectmen cannot fulfill the job for more than 4 months. And I don't remember discussing this, but what if a selectman resigns? So wouldn't that vacancy be immediate? Why would we wait 4 months if someone's resigned? Is that in the charter? I didn't get a chance to look at the charter.
If I remember correctly, I
yeah.
think it dealt with the fact that if essentially the person is unable to fulfill their duties, but has not officially resigned, then the 4 month window is then at that point it can be declared vacant.
Okay, so
That's-
none of
That's the way I remember it as well. So if you leave your position, that's you're not fulfilling the job for more than 4 months, right?
Well, you can resign,
Resign, right, that's what I mean,
or
right.
you just don't show up, or you're ill such that you cannot perform your duties for once it gets 4 months, then it can be declared vacant
Right.
in that case.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments on the meeting minutes from January 7th? Sorry. You're on mute, Commissioner Wackerman.
Oh.
Thanks. Yeah, I have two questions or item 10, the motion, I thought that motion was that the RTM could hire an attorney and that Commissioner DeWitt mentioned that, yeah, you can have that right, but you'll still have to have funding for that. But I don't think the motion wasn't just your comment about funding. It was that we could hire an attorney. That was of great interest to me. So I remember, this was item,
Yeah, right here, right?
yeah.
The motion was definitely not about funding. It was about the ability for the RTM to have an attorney.
Yeah. So if that could be changed.
Yep. So Prue, can we change this 1015-41A to I guess Commissioner Chair DeWitt made a motion to add language to 4.1 that the RTM is
I
Is-
can listen to it on the recording.
okay. All right. I want to get,
Thank you.
I really want to get these off our plate tonight though. So I want to make sure. So if everyone is okay with approving the minutes with whatever Prue hears on the minutes, then we're fine.
And I have just one other thing. In item 13, it says public climate, but I think it's supposed to be public comment.
Yes.
Okay. That's it.
Okay. Okay. Any further comments? Okay, great. So we already have a motion to put this before us. All in favor of approving the January 7th meeting minutes as modified per our conversation, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so moved. Thank you. In anticipation of the discussion, and I see all of these selectmen or select persons are now joining us. I'd like to move agenda item 8, at least the first part of agenda item 8, next, and move agenda items 5, 6, and 7 after that. Any discussion about that?
No.
Okay, wonderful. Agenda item 8, continued discussion on the CRC topic boards and commissions. So Selectman Vitale sent us through our website 2 recommendations that we're going to discuss tonight. One is in regards to the size of the Board of Selectmen, and I'll ask her to comment on that. And excuse me. And the second one was in regards to the Board of Education Purchasing Authority, which will be the discussion right after that. So I reached out to all of our Board of Selectmen and asked them to appear before us tonight to so that our commission may ask questions and hear select person Vitale's recommendation for a 5-person, or what her thoughts were behind the recommendation for a 5-person Board of Selectmen. So if we can put, can I have a motion to put this before the commission?
Second
I
motion.
move that it be put before the commission.
So moved. Okay, select person Vitale, I'll leave this up here. If you'd like to give the commission, I mean, we've all read this, but commission, select person Vitale's on board, first selectman Gerber is on board, and select person Kupchik is all here. So we thought it was important that the whole Board of Selectmen have comments in regards to this. So select person Vitale, if you'd like to give an overview, we'll start there.
Hello, everybody. I'm Christine Vitale. I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen. Thank you for taking the time just to discuss I can't even know if I'm sure if it's a recommendation, but I just wanted to share my thoughts on some of the challenges that I have faced being one of 3 on the Board of Selectmen. As I stated in my letter numerous times over the last year, I have found myself either with Mr. Gerber, at times Ms. Kupchik in public, and inevitably there might be a conversation about something that will come before the Board of Selectmen. It could be with a member of the public, it could be with a member of the Board of Education or other town boards or staff, and the conversation has to stop. Because being that we are a 3-member board, a quorum would be consisting of 2 members, and that would be a public meeting that would need to be noticed. So being very cognizant of FOI concerns, a lot of discussions don't happen. And I think that to some extent, it is a disservice to the town in that the 3 members of the Board of Selectmen, and I'm not even getting us with us personally, but historically have been people that have served on other boards, have been active in the community, bring a wealth of knowledge in various areas. And I think there might be some benefit for 2 of them to be able to have a conversation about something with each other, with staff, or with other constituents outside of a public meeting. And coming off of the Board of Education, which was a 9-member board, I missed the opportunity to have some of those offline discussions with either any Board of Ed member and a member of the administration. Very often the chair and the vice chair of the Board of Ed would meet with the first select person. That couldn't happen with a 3-person board. I think with the Board of Selectmen, the way that it is set up, having, in the case that we have right now, we have the current first selectman and the former first selectman serving together. I would think there might be some instances that it would be beneficial for those 2 members to have a conversation about something that might have happened in the past. Get some context of how we got to where we are right now. That communication cannot happen between the 2 of them. Ms. Kupchak and I, we cannot have any conversations offline. So if I had a question for her, as a former first select person, I would not be able to ask that question outside of a public meeting. And I struggle with this because I absolutely appreciate the value of transparency and that all business is done in public, but it can get messy at times, and that's not always fun to be part of or fun to watch, but it is, democracy sometimes does get messy. So I wanted to bring it before the commission really to get an outside perspective, share some of the challenges that I think members of the Board of Selectmen face. And, for minority representation, I think it gets to be a little bit challenging when a challenge to collaboration at times when you're just trying to throw out an idea and you want to just reach out to a fellow board member and say, what do you think of this? And maybe it's not fully fleshed out. You just want to get an idea, get some feedback, and that really doesn't happen right now. And I'll just leave it there. I mean, that's where I am right now. I
Okay.
appreciate the work that you're doing, and an outside perspective I think might be valuable in being that we go through this process, not once every 10, 25, it's not something that happens very often. I didn't want to miss the opportunity. Sorry for not being very eloquent about that, but I think you know where I'm coming from.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Let me open it up to the commission for any questions to Select Person Vitale before we open it up to the other 2 Board of Selectmen members.
Select Person Vitale, this is Jerry McHenry. We haven't met, but it's a pleasure to meet you even in this limited exposure. Do you have a number in mind?
I was thinking of 5. I mean, this is not something, and this is not a really thinking that we need to reorganize our entire town government. I very much value the expertise that each board brings, the Board of Finance, the RTM, having that representative body I think is so important. It really is more of just some challenges that I think the Board of Selectmen members face being part of a 3-person board, and our ability just to get some outreach and some, even, having conversations with, I found it's challenging at times to just wanting to get more information from the first selectman and staff before I come to the table, and those conversations don't happen. And I think that in some instances could be a disservice, because there's only so many hours during a meeting and you want to be efficient with your time.
Yeah, I think transparency is quite oftentimes an overused word, and it brings a negative connotation when it shouldn't. I think from the last meeting, I think you might understand, I support this concept because I think it's an unintended consequence of FOIA, and collaboration is a method of getting something accomplished. And stifling collaboration, I never find to be helpful.
I agree. I mean, coming from a 9-person board, there was much more opportunities to collaborate with members of the minority party to build collaboration, move things forward.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Wackerman.
I also think this is a good idea, Christine. And it might even be enhance the Board of Selectmen to have 5 different voices talking about things. It could make things longer, as you said in your comment. 3 is efficient, but maybe there's also some value in having 2 more heads with points of view as well. But I really hear you about the FOIA issue. That's important.
I mean, right now we're in the midst of budget season. You know, the Board of Education has passed a budget concerning, you know, how that's going to move forward. I'm a former chair of the Board of Education. The first Ms. Kupchik, former member of the Board of Education, the first selectman, myself, and the superintendent of schools couldn't have an informal conversation to brainstorm a path forward. And that might be a valuable conversation for us to have, but it will be happening hopefully, you know, at a public meeting in the future. And I think there's many instances that you can probably think of where people past boards of selectmen have an idea. You know, Ms. Lefkowitz, I know that she has ideas. I'm sure she would have loved to have an opportunity to speak with Ms. Kupchik offline, just to kind of brainstorm and kind of reach a common ground before bringing it to the public.
Okay. Any other commissioners have questions for Select Person Vitale? I actually have one. So
Sure.
would you envision a 5-person Board of Selectmen would have to have a well, it would have to have a mix, obviously a party mix. Would it always be 2, 3? A 4-1 Board of Selectmen would seem really, really hard,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I would envision a 3-2. Really, because I think that if you get, yeah, a 3-2.
Well, that assumes it's only Dems and
Well,
Republicans.
yeah, that is,
Affiliated,
that's
yeah.
true.
So,
Well, no, yeah, I guess that's the assumption that we have to make here.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from the commission before I ask First Selectman Gerber and Selectman Kupchik to make comments? Okay, well, ladies first, Selectman Kupchik, Select Person Kupchik, thank you for being here tonight. Would you like to comment, please? And you're on mute, Brenda, sir. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So I mean, I come obviously from this a little bit different perspective, having run the town for 4 years. I don't think I was shy in saying, based on all the information that we had received during the last charter revision commission from Attorney Mednick, who does charters all across the state, that our town was an outlier as far as our form of government, and towns of our size, literally, there's only Greenwich and Fairfield basically are the only 2 60,000 plus towns that have RTMs and Board of Selectmen. The majority of towns our size have a mayor, town council form of government. And, you know, listen, I served in the legislature for 10 years. I'm well aware of the, you know, don't touch my stuff. You know, we all want the land of steady habits that we're known for in Connecticut and throughout New England, but the rest of the country doesn't operate that way. And, you know, honestly, I think a 5-person board would just, you know, to the point that was brought up earlier, just make meetings longer. Right now, our form of government, having run the town, the first select person has to, you know, every item has to go through the Board of Selectmen, and, you know, could be 2, 3, 4, 5-hour meeting. Then they have to go and do the same groundhog thing, the Board of Finance. And they have to go through the RTM. Honestly, with a town our size and the multiple of problems that we encounter, I find it very duplicitous. And as far as being able to talk to members, you know, FOI means you can't talk about agenda items, but to talk about experiences that you had when you were in office, I could always share an experience that happened. This happened when I was there, or that happened when I was there. Not necessarily an agenda item per se. And Christine and Bill can always speak to each other because they are allowed to as members of the same party. They can caucus, and any of us can speak to staff anytime without any sort of restriction. We're able to call, the zoning department, the building department, whatever department, and ask a question about a budget item or a particular item that may be up for discussion, maybe a capital project, something like that. Listen, on top of all the other, challenges, the fill pile, the COVID, all of that in my 4-year term, these duplicitous meetings, it takes away from being able to really, meet with different groups, to meet with your staff, to flush things out, to be creative, and work on different ideas to make the town more efficient, more modern. Actually, I don't know if the commission took the time to look back at the work that the former charter commission did, all those links and all that data. I don't think there's a town really that has a 5-person board of selectmen, certainly not one with 60-something thousand people. We have a very big town. We're the 11th largest municipality out of 169. We're not a small town anymore. Although I like to think we are because I grew up here, but we are not. We are a big town with a lot of challenges. And frankly, the chief executive officer has a lot on their plate every single day. It's tremendous. So I don't really think would be helpful to add more sort of layers to our government and make it more sort of bureaucratic. And I think, having discussions in public is good for the public. They get to hear it, they get to see it, whether it's messy or not. They get to know what's going on with their town government. So I don't, listen, I respect Christine a lot. And I understand that, she maybe feels like she, the first year being in the office is feeling like maybe there's not a lot of collaboration, but, as far as I realize, and I'm not an attorney, but I can speak to Christine about the past. I could tell her if she has a question, and we could still talk to Board of Ed members about budget items. I could call a Board of Ed member and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or I could call the superintendent as just a member of the Board of Selectmen. Any elected official could. And you're not really kind of getting into that FOI thing. So I just, listen, I just don't think it's helpful to have more. My God, I don't know if anybody's been watching our meetings, but they go pretty long. And to add 2 more voices to it, we were almost at 3 hours last night. What are we going to go 5-6 hour meetings? We're not going to get anybody to run for the board if they're having to go to, these really long meetings. So that's just my 2 cents. Take it or leave it.
Okay. Thank you, Select Person Kupchak. I will tell you, personally, and I know I've spoken to a lot of our commissioners here, we have looked at some of the work that the former commission has done. We are using their document as a reference document, but we are independently making sure we address all of the concerns that taxpayers have put through. Taxpayers, elected officials, anyone, right, who is put through our website. So hence the reason for Select Person Vitale's comments here. And I'll just say, in a personal note, I would really be disappointed in us if we voted on the number of Board of Selectmen based on how long the meetings go. That would really be a disappointment for me, because I served on a board for 16 years, Board of Finance, and we had long meetings, and a lot of people hated it, but I thought we really did some good work. Granted, in the 4th, 5th hour, you're probably not doing your best work, but I think there are merits and detriments, frankly, to a 5-person board. So, to some of which you've mentioned. So, thank you for your comments. Would anyone any of the commissioners like to comment or ask Select Person Kupchak any questions before First Selectman Gerber speaks? All right, we'll let the first. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yes, Chris. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner DeWitt. So, Selectman Kupchak, Eric Treshik here, and good to meet you, and thank you for testifying. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on your comment on the ability for the two other selectmen to confer via caucus. And that seems to be opposite of what Selectman Vitale mentioned. So I'm confused as far as what can or can't happen in that. And I guess it looks like Selectman Vitale is raising her hand to comment on that.
Well, our government always allows the same party to caucus, right? So you might not be familiar with it, but so on the Board of Selectmen, when I was the first select woman, I could talk to Tom Flynn, who was of the same party, about items. And Nancy would go through an in-between. So she would call my CAO, or she would call my chief of staff, or she would call Jennifer and, you know, say, you know, I want Brenda to know this, or I want to know if Brenda thinks about it, but we couldn't actually speak to each other as the two members of the same party could. So Christine and Bill could talk to each other every day on the phone about items that are on the agenda and items that are not on the agenda, as are with the other boards, Board of Finance and RTM.
Thank you.
Select Person Vitale.
And to clarify, Mr. Gerber and I, we do caucus together. It really is if another person comes into the room. So, you know, there's been instances where after a meeting, we'll finish a meeting, we'll be walking out, the town attorney will be there. You know, we cannot speak to the town attorney about really anything, the two of us. If you had a question, we were out and I ran into one of you and we started talking about your work, that probably would not be appropriate because eventually the Board of Selectmen is going to be acting on the charter. So instances like that, and it happens very often, just, you know, Mr. Gerber and I find ourselves together a lot at various events, and members of the public, you know, come over and they want to talk about something, and the Board of Selectmen being the executive branch, many things fall in front of us. So we're both very sensitive to making sure that we are not violating FOI. So if you see us like someplace and we're apart, it's usually to make sure that we don't violate that. And just to clarify, I do speak to staff, you know, one-on-one, but I think that there's some opportunities where it could be beneficial, and to even take the personalities out of it, for two members of the Board of Selectmen to have the opportunity to collaborate together for an idea to bring forward to the larger group. That really can't happen unless they're of the same party, or to collaborate with staff or a member of the public for something new just to bring before the board. And it's opportunities like that that really prompted me to share this with you. I did a brief, you know, looking at some other communities. I did find some 5-person Board of Selectmen. I didn't dive deeper to see what their RTM and Board of Finance looked like, but there was some precedent before I reached out. And again, just really wanted to put it to a broader audience, and that's it. Thank you. But I did just want to give that additional information.
All right, thank you. For Selectmen, please make your comments, your thoughts. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to this commission for all the work you're doing. Really appreciate the hours that you're putting in. It's vital. On this topic, you know, I understand the inconvenience of being a select person, but as I've discussed with Christine several times, I think fixing that inconvenience with a larger board would actually be a bad thing for government. You know, that is an inconvenience that we can get around, although it's awkward at times. As Christine mentioned, as Brenda mentioned, you can get around it through talking directly to staff. Christine can talk directly with me all she wants. If someone comes into the room, yes, you know, we should stop talking and then she could continue. It is an awkward situation for sure, but there's a reason. I think there's one town in Connecticut that has a person or more Board of Selectmen that is not a town meeting. You guys all know the difference between a representative town meeting and a town meeting. Town meeting is the town goes to vote on major issues, but those agendas are set by, they're not, it's not a board. They don't set their own agenda. The agenda is set by usually the Board of Selectmen. What you're really talking about is creating a town council within a representative town meeting setting, which, I don't think, I'm not sure there's a precedent. I think maybe Darien has a large RTM and a 5-person or a larger Board of Selectmen, but that really doesn't make any sense to me, just especially solving an inconvenience for the selectmen. I know, Chris, you mentioned that, you've sat in some long meetings, but I would like to say, we've got staff that sit in on long meetings for every meeting, not just a Board of Finance meeting,
Sure.
but multiple meetings, and it takes up a ton of time. And I don't see this helping with staff recruitment. I think we'd have to grow staff to manage this because it is already a lot. I have a deputy chief of staff who helps put together agendas for various boards and commissions. This would be multiplying, the amount of work. It would be, a much longer meeting for not just myself, but for the staff on the Board of Selectmen. Then going to, you have to realize that there are some towns that have finance committees that are appointed. We have a very, very active Board of Finance of 9 members. Those meetings go, like you said, because you were on it, Chris, they go for sometimes 5 hours. And sometimes our staff are there for the duration. Some towns don't have that. They're much more not quite as active. And then we go to RTM meetings and do it all over again. And so I think we need to choose. Are we going to be? I mean, Brenda was very clear last time around that she preferred a mayor town council, and that would have gotten rid of the Board of Selectmen altogether. Would have gotten rid of the RTM, and possibly could have had a finance committee instead of an elected Board of Finance. But and that's not a stupid idea by any stretch. I just think the reason that was ultimately rejected was because people need more time to digest that. And I don't really mind talking to various, I kind of enjoy the participatory democracy that we have. It is a lot of, it's very time consuming for a town, with so much going on, so many complexities. It takes a lot of my time. It takes a lot of my staff time. But this will make it worse. And I don't really see the benefit other than, I think you're fixing an inconvenience and you're creating a much bigger problem. And we'd be an outlier in Connecticut or anywhere else because most places don't even have this form of government. That, I believe, that's basically the way I feel. Transparency and collaboration. Yeah, those terms are meaningful. But we have one of the most transparent, collaborative governments that you can imagine. It's so highly participatory. You're talking about adding really more to the administrative, requirements, and really probably ultimately to the requirements for staff to manage it. And you probably ultimately are going to weed out people who just will not want to deal. I mean, already it's a hard government to deal with for anyone in office. So, I'm very much against this, as I've mentioned to Christine several times, and I think it would be very, very damaging.
All right, thank you, First Selectman Gerber. I just want to say to Select Person Kupchak, my apologies. I took your comments as one meeting in the Board of Selectmen, but Select Person Gerber really did highlight that this is there's a cumulative effect here, right? It's not just one meeting, right? It's every meeting. So apologies for my comment. That was not my intention. So, Commissioner Blanco.
Good evening, everybody. Wanted to thank all the select persons to come and testify before us. Couple of questions, just generally, I wanted to wait to hear everybody's thoughts. Chris, when you articulated Selectman Vitale, there was a lack of transparency. Can you point or give me a metric where you saw that you could have done something, but you couldn't because you weren't able to caucus in the way you wanted or confer the way you wanted? Is there a specific example? I'm trying to frame, in my mind at least, what's being juxtaposed in front of us.
You're on mute.
You're select person Vitale, you're on mute.
I think that for budget right now, you know, with just some of the decisions that are being made around education, there have been working groups that other elected officials that have been able to participate in. I think I have an area of just expertise and historical knowledge that would be valuable to those discussions in making decision-making, you know, just the direction to go, added color, and it absolutely could be that discussion to be had at the table, but very much here, Mr. Gerber and Ms. Kupchik's concerns about making a meeting longer. So I think that if you're going to have a lot of these discussions in public, you run the risk of making the meeting longer. So I struggle with that a little bit. I think that shouldn't be a metric for judging this. And it really isn't inconvenience. It's more of, I guess, my own thought that selectmen can participate more with other, with members of the public and staff and some of the decision making before it gets to the board table, to do some of that homework and fleshing things out. The RTM, the Board of Finance, the Board of Ed, they all do some of that work in committee. The Board of Selectmen does not have that committee structure, in part because there's only 3 people. And you can't have a committee with 2 because then you're a quorum of the Board of Selectmen. And it may be, I totally admit that it may just be an adjustment, having served on a 9-person board that worked in a committee structure and was collaborative, switching to a 3-person board and some of the challenges that I see and opportunities potentially missed for collaboration and bringing a better product to the table at times, I think, for the public to participate in.
I would just thank you. The motivation is wonderful. Select person Kupchik and Selectman Gerber, would you also share a similar experience where you thought there was an opportunity that was missed because you were constricted by this tenet in the charter?
Bill, do you want to go first, or?
Oh, it's up, you know, feel free to go first. Or...
Well, I think I would just, no, the answer to that question is no. You know, because my staff was pretty available to the minority select person. She actually called them a lot and emailed them a lot. What I think Christine, though, was talking about, like being maybe, because we just had this discussion last night at the Board of Selectmen meeting, where there was a whole discussion about Dwight School. And I think, you know, maybe I'm wrong, Christine, but I think maybe Christine's talking about wanting to be a little bit more engaged in certain areas because she was on the Board of Ed, she was the chair, and maybe wanted to be included in some of the meetings. And I think the caveat that she can't be in a meeting with staff and Bill at the same time, which I don't know, but maybe you could go, and, a different time with, or be part of that group too, so that you can share your expertise. I mean, maybe I'm just throwing it out there. I kind of feel like that's
I can give another example.
I think you're
outside
right.
of- I think I give another example. I serve as liaison to the WPCA. There were discussions early on that the chair of the WPCA, the first selectman, staff, in terms of direction. And there's been many instances where the first selectman has said, oh, I wish you could be there. You know, you're a member it makes sense for you to be there. You're a member so you would have some of the background of some of the decisions that eventually are going to come before the WPCA, but that opportunity was missed. And I totally, hear what you're both saying. And I appreciate this discussion that we're able to have it. Not in my letter, I even said I appreciate some of the challenges and some of the inconveniences that this change could make. So I struggled with it. So very much just appreciating having the conversation with a wider audience.
Maybe Christine, you even just engaging with, I know you probably talked to the members of the WPCA, on your own, because of your liaison status. I just feel, in my own sort of like philosophical belief, smaller governments work better.
Gotcha.
I can't stand expanding the size. And already what I look at like a very slow government. I like a little bit more action, I guess. I like things to move a little bit quicker.
Yeah,
I want-
you mind if I say a couple? Oh,
No,
go ahead.
please, go ahead, Selectman Gerber, please.
Yeah, so again, I know it's inconvenient and it's awkward, and sometimes you've got to repeat things. If it's someone in your caucus and with someone else, you've got to go through sort of intermediaries. It can be awkward, but there is nothing, I think as Brenda was saying, there's nothing stopping a select person from being engaged with staff. There would be nothing stopping Selectman Vitale from having a portfolio. I can't be in the room, when she's working on her, on her whatever portfolio she would have, but could ask for, specific things to lead on as well. But but the inconvenience is that I can't be in the room with her. And that if there's a discussion on that, it would have to be repeat. We would repeat. She would come back and inform me of what she had done, or if Selectwoman Kupchik had a portfolio, she would have to go through intermediaries, and we would have to discuss this at the table. And I believe the purpose of this is so that things are discussed in public, not behind closed doors. So, and in terms of, committees, yeah, I mean, we could have a committee of the Board of Selectmen, but I don't know how that would work. It would be all of us, So I do think it's an inconvenience and it is awkward, but, and I do think it would be a huge outlier to move in this direction. I can only think of one town that has more than 3 select persons that is not a town meeting format. I mean, there's a reason, you don't want too many boards that can set agendas and call witnesses and do all, oh, the light just, so, this would be adding basically a town council kind of size structure to a town that's already got a lot of government, which, as Selectwoman Kupchik said, is already more government than most towns, and it's already a lot to deal with. And so, I do understand why they looked at slimmer government in the last go round, and I think that conversation is probably a long-term conversation and getting people used to it. I do like the idea of participation in government, but I think this goes too far.
Okay.
Sorry, just to follow up. First Selectman Gerber, so you can't point to an incidence where the current structure in some way impeded and performance of something that would have been so important to rise as to change something that was fundamental.
No, I definitely not.
Okay.
Because Selectwoman Vitale, Christine while she's on the WPCA, she's not an engineer, she's not an expert on. So, you know, in the big decisions, I'm talking to engineers, I'm talking to, you know, construction people, construction managers. It would be nice to be able to have Christine in a room with all of these, you know, experts while we're talking. It would be convenient. It would. But it's just really a convenience. And what the way it would work now is, you know, if she learned something, she'd have to tell me separately. If I learned something, I'd have to tell her separately. But you know, the real work is done by you know, experts on the topic.
Can I ask a question to that?
Yes, Commissioner McInerney.
You just gave an example, as far as I'm concerned, as to how this process avoids redundancy. If Selectman Vitale attends the meeting with you, with the engineers, at that one moment in time, she can have her questions vetted. You can have your questions vetted. Now, two people have had the opportunity in one setting to have been informed, maybe reach conclusions, maybe have an agreement, where what you're suggesting by the layers you laid out earlier, well, if she's not in the room, she can have her own discussion, then she can come back with her discussion, then we can repeat the conversation, and then we can go to intermediaries. So, Selectman, you laid out a 5-layer redundancy, which could be affected by the ability of 2 members of the Board of Selectmen being in a room with others having an informed conversation. Maybe I'm naive, and I have no problem being told that. But in a 2-party government, the ability for you to have a conversation with a minority member before a hearing, to allow a conversation of possible challenges, maybe a town attorney question or whatever, you could knock off 5 things before you get to a public hearing, and maybe your public hearings would be shorter, not longer. That's what I see as a potential benefit. Now, I will tell you, I haven't been at a Board of Selectmen meeting, and I can't tell you how they're run, if they're run too long or not. Collaboration is the way people get along. Collaboration in a meeting of the minds is the method of good government. And it doesn't have to occur in public for it to be good. It has to occur with an opportunity to be heard. So I find these false flags, as far as I'm concerned, that just because we add to the Board of Selectmen, we create redundancy or we create a longer meeting. My naivety might be that if we add to the Board of Selectmen, we give an opportunity for collaboration between majority and minority party. We give an opportunity for members of the same party who could only otherwise caucus but could not talk when an other individual comes into the room. You are taking away layers by increasing the size of the board. You're taking away all of these barriers that you're putting up to the collaborative effort that might occur. That's just how I see it. And I could be wrong, but that's my observation here.
Thank you, Commissioner McInerney. You know, when I first read this this recommendation, the first thing that came to my mind was WPCA. It's always been troubling to me that our charter says there will be a liaison from the Board of Selectmen that will sit on the WPCA. So I wonder, I am not a FOIA expert, nor am I a FOIA lawyer, but I wonder if there is some way to break this problem down, and maybe in the realm of in the role of liaison, the FOIA can be lifted, because I tell you, and again, we'd have to ask the town attorney or someone with a lot more knowledge, right? But I feel like, especially with WPCA, the whole reason one of the Board of Selectmen is there is to tell the other ones what the heck is going on, right? And any communication that will facilitate that seems to make sense to me. Now, I'll contradict myself a little bit. The two people who would probably know how this would affect the day-to-day runnings of the town are in the bottom two corners of my screen here, in Select Person Kupchik and Selectman Gerber, and I take their recommendations very seriously. So that's where I'm standing right now. Are there any other commissioners who would like to question Commissioner Treshik?
Thanks, Chair DeWitt. Just a question on process. My reading of the overall charter revision process is that essentially the board has what I'll call a line item veto on our changes. So let's assume we approve 10 changes, or recommend 10 changes to the board, and this is one of them. And let's just stipulate the position stated here, the board would probably vote this particular one down based on the conversation so far. Does that kill our entire charter revision, or we would just essentially line item veto that particular change out of our recommended changes? How does that process
You've
work?
got it right. That's how it went last time, Eric.
It's which one?
You can line item.
You can line item veto? Perfect. Okay, thank you.
It's such a complicated.
Good.
You know, I did make that recommendation. I know when you first all were appointed, and I know it's boring as hell to watch all those meetings, but they were so incredibly informative. And to have that knowledge of someone who understands charters across the state, and that a whole real deep discussion about how, actually I learned a lot, you know, how it has to go to the Board of Selectmen, then it has to go back to the commission, then it comes back. It's like, it's very layered.
Yes.
But as far as the WPCA goes, you know, just to sort of pick up where Jerry was talking, you know, we do have collaboration. And you know, the WPCA is its own entity. It makes its own decisions. Christine is liaison, as have other past members of the board been, and they're supposed to just come before the board and present, you know, an update about what's going on at the WPCA. So that's supposed to be for the whole board. As the minority member who wouldn't be included in anything, or nobody can talk to, you know, you want to hear those updates, and as does the public, right? So if people don't have time to go to a WPCA meeting and they happen to be at a Board of Selectmen meeting, they get to hear that update from the liaison, and then the first selectman can chime in, because we're at a public meeting. And he could say, oh, you know, I met with this engineer, or I met, and, you know, you're right, or I'm interested in this piece. I mean, it's still allowing collaboration, but in a public setting where everyone can have an opportunity to hear it.
Yeah, that's true. And I have been to a lot of WPCA meetings, and, you know, Christine is a liaison to them, and we have, you know, conversations at the board table, and there's no issue with that.
All right. Any other comments from the commissioners?
Chris, I have one.
Commissioner McCann, please.
I just think that, I mean, I appreciate Select Person Vitale's concern and principle. My feeling is that and I've said this at past meetings, I feel like the town is largely in denial as to its size. Select Person Kupchak kind of pointed that out. I think it's an important point. I mean, thank God for Greenwich, because they are, also in denial. I think we kind of we may lean on each other sometimes. But I mean, at 65,000 people, I mean, there are, and in the top 15, there are maybe two towns. And I feel like I said, in principle, it's a good proposal, but in practice, I think it just, leads us farther down that road of denial. A 5-person executive branch, it's something that you don't see in towns of 65,000 people. It's something that you see in towns of 10,000 people, 15,000 people. And at some point, the town just has to realize that it's no longer a town, and probably move to some sort of council form of government. But God willing, that won't be us.
You don't want the barn to be stormed by red torches.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I think that would take a real effort of, getting people on board over several years.
Yeah,
agree.
But I think at some point it needs to happen. Not while I'm sitting on this board, but at some point it needs to. It really needs to happen, because it's crazy that this town is 65,000 people. It likes to call itself a quaint little town with a representative town meeting, and it's really not that, and it's not headed in that direction. It's headed in a more populist direction. So yeah, that's my feeling on it.
Yeah, can I just say one more thing?
Please, Secretary.
So my view was, again, when Brenda's last Charter Revision Commission was kind of moving in a direction of considering a mayor-town council model, clearly the town wasn't ready for that, because maybe they didn't understand it or whatever, and just wasn't going to happen. But and I am, I feel having a board of selectmen of people that can offer advice at the table is nice, but what I think we're trying to solve to make make sort of the board of selectmen into more of a town council, where people actually have, are like going to meetings and sort of being part of the executive function of the town, like what, taking up part of what the CEO of the town, which is me right now and was Brenda before, in order to solve what I said is an inconvenience of having to go through different mediums to communicate at the table. You're creating a whole nother layer of government that, right now, I think, it's a marginal benefit to have a board of selectmen. And that's just, the inconveniences around that are a little bit messy. Now on on what Jerry was saying, like collaboration, I mean, there's so much collaboration that has to go on in this government. Collaborating, first of all, with Board of Selectmen in whatever way we can, but with a 9-person elected Board of Finance and a 40-person RTM, this government is all about collaboration. I just think if you pick this up and pass it, I think it's going too far, because it's a big, the current form is a burden, and it's overwhelming at times. 5-hour meetings, like 4-hour meetings, 3-hour, almost every night, doesn't give your staff always time and preparing for those, and then answering questions from various board members. They sometimes don't have enough time to perform their functions of government. And, at going from 3 to 5 executive members, I just think would be too much of a burden.
Well, I'm listening. I hear you.
mean,
You know,
just-
maybe that's my naivety.
Yeah, you have to watch a lot of meetings and then
Yeah,
you'll probably understand.
No,
what do they say? You
that's
gotta
why
walk a mile in your
I
shoes.
phrased it that way. I
Understand.
phrased it that way. So, and I take Eric's point, and the general consensus. If we believe in the future that we might have to move to a different form of town government, running this up the flagpole from this commission as something to be considered and then voted down might be counterproductive in other ways. So,
Well,
Yeah, I think it would require a real education campaign. I don't know who would
Yeah,
run that,
yeah.
but
But
yeah.
Bill, it's interesting. I'm looking at other towns that do what you said. Other towns are doing charter. And I think, listen, when I did it, I brought up my thoughts and ideas, what I thought would work. Now, obviously, there was pushback, but I mean, I wasn't wedded to it. I wanted the Charter Revision Commission to look at everything. I wanted them to be free to look at everything. What some towns are doing is just cleaning up their charters. They're getting the index, they're just doing, because our charter is so antiquated. It hasn't been updated in 2006, as you probably all know. And it maybe, doing the index and getting some of that, like, stuff that just needs to get cleaned up. And then maybe in a few years, you come back with a campaign of saying, hey, listen, take a look at these numbers. I mean, if you look at the spreadsheets from the other towns that were submitted to the last charter commission by Attorney Mednick, it shows very clearly we are an outlier, as Brian was saying. We are an outlier, us and Greenwich. Everybody else has, their towns are 20,000, 30,000, smaller governments. And so our town size, and what's really interesting about it is that, most of the people who spoke against changing our form of government were people who are currently sitting in seats at the time that didn't want to give up their seat. Sometimes people have to look beyond themselves and say, what's good for the good of our town, right? And town councils, if you look at the information about them, they have more power than an RTM. They actually have a lot more power. They work directly with the mayor. They have real power, whereas the RTM doesn't really have much power. But again, to Bill's point, I think you have to kind of get there slowly. And what Brian was saying, he doesn't want to be anywhere near it. And he doesn't want to be on the commission, which I don't blame you, because boy, you talk about changing the form of government and, certain people show up. And it's interesting to see the makeup of the people who show up, because usually they have a vested interest in it. Your average everyday citizen has no idea what our charter is, how it works. They just don't.
Commissioner
I mean,
Blanco?
Oh, thank you so much, Chair. I was just going to comment that I liked where you were going with your previous comment, Chair DeWitt, on maybe dissecting the problem down maybe a little bit further and maybe giving some latitude, so to speak, so that maybe there's more engagement. I think that's where you were going with that. Isn't that right, Chair DeWitt?
On the WPCA, it would
Yeah.
seem to me there should be some way. I don't want to say around FOI, because that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to get around anything, but it would seem to be there would be some way to have some agreement that would allow a lot more
Right.
flexibility with the liaison to the WPCA.
Pardon the open parlay, everybody, but Chair DeWitt, that's right. I mean, that's why I asked the question, how does that impact performance, right? And 2 out of the 3 selectmen said no, it didn't. Selectman person Vitale came up with a very good concept there about being unable to engage in a meaningful way. So maybe without throwing the quorum requirement out, is there something else we could do in a meaningful way, right? Chair DeWitt to assist. I don't know. I don't know what
that
is.
might be a lawyer question.
Yeah, that's what
we could certainly ask we have a lawyer. Absolutely. We could ask if that, and listen, we are going to take up the topic of WPCA, because that is one of the things that really has to be addressed in this charter, right?
Yep.
I mean, just to be specific though on WPCA, I can talk to Christine about WPCA. I can talk to her at meetings about WPCA. But when our new, general manager comes in and we roll up our sleeves and we have a working session, she can't be in the room. So, you know,
Right.
but, and so that if she wanted to have a working session, she would have to do it separately. So, you know,
Got
there
it.
is a lot of collaboration that can happen at the WPCA table and in my office, but it can't happen in my office with Michelle Gore there.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? Okay, seeing none. Just a couple comments. So first off, thank you to all of the Board of Selectmen for being here tonight. Very much appreciate your data. We've been and I've been promoting 3 basic tenets for charter revision success. One is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm feeling like this is in that category. 2, if the selectmen aren't going to approve it, then, you know, again, as Commissioner Treshik said, we don't want to spend a lot of time on that, and I think that's still the case here. And the third, and most importantly, is this has to pass a referendum, right? And Selectman Kupchak, it is not lost on me that Shelton has been trying to pass a charter revision 5 times, and the last one, I got to tell you, was the most innocuous little stupid change, and everybody still sent it down.
Yeah, isn't it
They've
interesting?
there's something in their heads in Shelton that are saying, don't vote for this, even though it might make perfect sense, right?
But I think it's not just Shelton, Chris, you know, I've been following that Shelton thing too.
Yeah.
I think people are just afraid of change, you know, and they hear
I
it
would
and they
agree.
don't get it and they say, no, nope, I'd rather not. If I don't get it, I don't want to say yes. And let's face it, this is charters are complicated documents. And our average everyday citizens have no idea that we even have one.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And then my last point is to Selectman Gerber. When we're all ready to collectively talk about changing the form of government, we should spend 6 months to a year with a campaign that says, here's why we need to do it, rah rah, and then convene a charter commission that has nothing else to do other than change that particular stuff.
Mm. Good
I
point.
agree that that's the only way to do it, because it's way too, from the last time around, I think, you know, it's such a big topic that you can't patch up, you know, the things that need to get patched up and do that, because I think you could spend 9 months, 12 months on educating the public and
Exactly.
yeah.
And we don't have that time, as everyone keeps telling me every day. So the other thing that this Charter Revision Commission has adopted, and I'm going to do it right now, is we make a sensitive body. Usually it's me making a sensitive body motion when we have a substantive conversation like this. Now, my sensitive body is that I would recommend that we not. So most of the time it's what are we going to change? I think for this topic, it's worth saying. I make a motion for sensitive body that we not change the size of the Board of Selectmen or the mix, anything to do with the Board of Selectmen.
I
Do I have a
second the
second?
motion.
Commissioner McInerney is seconding. Is there any discussion on this? Any further discussion? Yes, Commissioner Wackerman.
I guess I have trouble seeing that 2 more people would be that much of a problem, government-wise, but I also see that 2 of the 3 members of the Board of Selectmen aren't in favor of this, so I think it's a practical matter. I'll probably vote against it, but it was hard for me to understand why this would make such a big difference. But the reality is it's probably not gonna go forward anyway.
Yeah, so
Duly noted.
Commissioner,
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Blanco.
Commissioner Wackerman, what was discussed afterward, to your point, because there were some valid constructs that select person Vitale came forward, is that we wanted a caucus and discuss maybe there's a way to augment constructively how they can interface with certain things like the WPCA, et cetera. And it was an attorney question.
Yep.
And just from my standpoint, I really appreciate all the select persons coming on this tonight.
Mhm.
I really appreciate all the hard work. I see the hours you all put in. The dedication is absolutely stupendous. And it's just one of the reasons this is one of the best towns anybody could live in, is because folks like you get up every day and work 15 and 16 hours, right? And do this. So thank you.
Folks like you do charter revision.
Mm.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
This is fun.
So, there is a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, Commissioner Hoag, if you would come off of camera, because I just want to make sure I get an accurate count. Thank you very much. If there's no further discussion, all in favor of my motion to not change the mix of selectmen, say aye and raise your hand.
I
True, it is unanimous. 7, so we are now 7-0-0. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Selectman Gerber. I know you have a Board of Finance meeting. Please pass along my best regards to all my friends there. Selectman
I will.
Kupchak, thank you for your time. Selectman Vitale, we are not done with you yet.
All right.
Okay.
right, well,
Thank you so much. I'm going to sign
thank
off.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you for your
Bye,
time.
guys.
Thank you.
thank you.
Take care.
Okay, well, we're still on number 8, the second part of Select Person Vitale's recommendations, and I would like to welcome the Board of Education Chairman, Jeff Peterson, and I would like to say hello to our Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Testani, who gave all the kids a day off today, and he looks like he's comfortable at home.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Happy to be here. Nice to see you.
And it was the right call.
Yeah, I would agree. Don't get me started on DPW and plowing, but Mr. Testani made the right call.
I'm batting 1,000 since I became superintendent in 6 years ago. So
No, good job. So this topic is the second topic that Selectman Vitale recommended, which was, and I'll let her articulate it better than I, but an independent Board of Education purchasing authority. Now, just so we all know, there is a purchasing organization under the Board of Education today and under central office, but for major purchases or for any large purchases, outside, especially outside of the budget, the purchasing authority of the town is through the purchasing department within the town. So, for all intent and purpose, the purchasing authority in the town is kind of where the buck stops. No exaggeration. I think Selectman Vitale's recommendation is to make a separate body that would not have to work through the town purchasing. But I'll let her articulate that, please.
Thank you. And this is actually a carryover from the last Charter Revision Commission. And at that time, I was the chair of the Board of Education, and we were facing some real challenges with getting things approved through the purchasing department of the town, to the point that some vendors were refusing to do business with us. We had special education students that were outplaced or receiving specialized services that were not getting them. We had textbooks that the Board of Education approved not only budget for, but approved through the curriculum process that were getting held up. There were questions that were being asked, why are you purchasing these particular textbooks and not other particular textbooks? The purchasing authority at the time, and it's not the same authority that it is now, people have changed, were in some instances seeming to wanting to be making decisions about education policy and procedures that the board at that time did not feel was within its purview. Per state statute, boards of education have the authority to purchase goods and services. Our CFO at the time just shared that we are somewhat of an outlier, Fairfield, in not having the Board of Education do its own purchasing and handling that aspect of it, given the authority the board has through state statute. Usually the superintendent would act as the purchasing authority in instances where the purchasing was not handled by the town. I then went off the board and the purchasing policy was finalized. And I thank Mr. DeWitt for his work on that and working with the board, listening to the board's concerns to hopefully rectify some of the very real challenges we were facing at that time. I wanted to put it before this commission just to really close a loop, because I feel like it really wasn't closed the last time. There was something in that actually, I won't go back in essence of time, but I appreciate it. I just really I appreciate you inviting Mr. Peterson and Mr. Testani here just to get a read of the current situation. But it was an issue last time, so wanted to bring it before you.
Thank you, Selectman Vitale. Just to be clear, I am clearly biased on this. I spent 2 years of my life writing a purchasing policy that I really wanted to make sure that it answered the questions and it did the right thing for the Board of Education. And so I guess you could take all my comments on this with a grain of salt, frankly. But what I really wanted to do tonight was I wanted the new chairman of the Board of Education and the superintendent to come here and, and frankly, talk about the fact if the purchasing policy really doing what they're doing, and to comment on this. Before I send it to them, would any of the commissioners like to have any further follow-on questions to Selectman Vitale? Commissioner Wackerman.
Thank you. Is it right that that the Board of Ed did have its own purchasing authority maybe 5 or 7 years ago, and then it went to the town, or am I incorrect about that?
Incorrect.
Okay. So the Board of Ed gets a budget, and that budget would include whatever they think they have to purchase. So I guess I don't really understand why the Board of Ed wouldn't be in control of what it's buying with its own budget. But I welcome, I don't know that the inner workings of it. I welcome hearing other people, but to me it seems obvious. But anyway.
Thank you, Commissioner Wackerman. Commissioner Hoag. You're on mute, Commissioner Hoag.
Looking up different types of governments. Didn't want you to hear me shuffling my paper. I was interested in, I appreciate that the town and the Board of Ed buy things together like fuel or other things to get that bulk discount. But I guess who creates that list of, okay, this stuff is Board of Ed and this stuff isn't? And, I just was curious how you foresee that split.
Yeah, I mean, today, again, I'm probably not articulating well. The purchasing authority for the entire town of Fairfield is the purchasing department and through the CFO, right? Those decisions are made at the CFO's office. So, for example, we all buy the same fuel at the same price. We all buy our electricity. We're all buying the same paper, that kind of stuff, right? Where there was a real issue, and it was an issue, is that there were very specific things that the Board of Education buys, and it's not necessarily like a thing, but a lot of it was services.
Well, that's why I was asking, but I was asking the people visiting, I wasn't asking.
Well, I haven't opened it up to the people visiting yet, but okay,
But I wasn't expecting an answer right away. I was
told gotcha.
That when they speak,
then I'll stop speaking.
Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners before? Okay, Mr. Peterson, please. How are you?
I'm fine, and thanks for inviting us. I do have a little PTSD on this issue, Mr. DeWitt.
Yes, because you served with us. Yes.
When I was as chair of the Board of Ed Finance Committee, this was brought to me by Ms. Vitale and the superintendent at the time, Mike Cummings. And everything that she described was, I think, accurate. One of the things that, our vendors weren't being paid either, which I don't think is something that she mentioned, but there was certainly a factor there too.
Right.
You know, and Mr. DeWitt, you know, I am, you know, Laura Charlton and Ms. Laborious were talking on various occasions about, you know, specialized services, you know, and should there be an approved vendors list? And, you know, was this sent out to bid for, you know, did we get 3 bids on something? And, you know, in a case where someone comes into our district, we need to provide them services immediately in a lot of those cases. And it's just a purchasing policy that was, you know, that rigorous and you know, with very specific avenues was not flexible enough for us. And I really think that, kind of to your point, Mr. DeWitt, you know, my sense, and I'm an outsider, I'll leave it up to Mr. Testani, obviously, to talk about the, you know, the day-to-day. But I think that one of the things that's happened in the past couple of years is that, you know, with your purchasing policy, but our communication has improved dramatically. And level of understanding between the town and the Board of Ed and what our specialized needs are has improved a great deal. So I mean, when I saw this as a suggestion, at first I thought, well, do we need this now? But of course, we're where we are now, and if you're trying to create a document that's, you know, going to take us, you know, longer in history, we can't always rely on how things are working now. So I'm actually interested in what Mr. Testani has to say about this, obviously from the day-to-day experience. But, you know, from my standpoint, I'm not opposed to this. I've kind of seen it both ways. I think we are functional now in a way that 2 years ago we were not, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for our better relationship with the town and better defined policies and procedures. But, you know, is there a way to make that better and to take it in-house for us? I think a case can be made.
Selectman Vitale?
And just, I would also just like to hear when Mr. Testani speaks, also brought this forward just in terms of duplicating jobs. Is someone at the town doing the same thing? You know, the Board of Ed vets, you know, all the POs and everything before it goes to the town. So just want to make sure that we're not, in terms of looking for operational efficiencies, brought it forward for that as well. Thank you.
Well, without further ado, let's go right to Superintendent Testani. Thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I will echo what Ms. Vitale and Mr. Peterson said. My first several months in Fairfield was difficult. There was a lot of complaints coming that things were being held up. We had goods and services that we needed to pay. POs weren't being, and requisitions were not being approved. I can tell you, since there's been a change in the purchasing department, things have gone very smoothly. We work much more collaboratively. Communication is greatly improved. The expedition of, you know, requisitions and purchase orders is, you know, seamless right now. So I can't say that the experience has not dramatically done a 180 over the last 18 months or so, since new folks are sitting in that department. You know, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I do think, for me, having that extra level at the town just makes things a little bit more, I guess, puts a little bit more controls in and gives a little bit more sense of, I guess, reliability to the public, that there's not going to be any misuse of funding and spending. At the same time, you know, it's something that I think about constantly when we're doing things, that we follow all the processes and procedures that the town has put in place. I can say from my previous district, it was the same way. The ultimate purchasing authority was on the municipal side, not on the Board of Ed side. So it's not like a dramatic change in operations for me as superintendent. It is a lot of responsibility then. And I can say that sometimes, you know, it becomes a lot of responsibility that can fall upon one individual. And sometimes that individual is not always looped in on all of the spending. So I think having some sort of layer there on the town side that could possibly pick up on something is a good internal control to have when I think about this. But
Yeah.
you know, it's a tough way to be in a position to say, yeah, we should have it on our end here on the Board of Ed side. Because I do see some of the benefits just having that internal control with another layer from the town purchasing side. And again, it's been working greatly. You know, we just had an instance in the last week where we need to expedite something, a purchase for Dwight's school, and we had no issues dealing with the purchasing department, understanding the urgency that we had. So
Superintendent Testani, could you give I think the commission might benefit. What would be something that the Board of Ed can go purchase based on the fact that they have an approved budget without having to go through the purchasing authority?
I think Ms. Vitale mentioned, you know, textbooks, for example. You know, a textbook is chosen and voted upon as a resource that aligns with curriculum. Yeah, for example, a social studies textbook. There's probably hundreds of vendors that sell social studies textbook, but we have, through a vetted committee of teachers and administrators, choose one that best aligns with the standards and that we want to incorporate in our curriculum. So you wouldn't necessarily go out to bid for something like that. And it's not a sole source, obviously, but it has been chosen to be the resource that would be preferred by the staff to incorporate in teaching for the foreseeable future. Contracted services for special education students. Right. You know, in many cases, we do go out to bid, but we don't go out to bid on every instance. We go out to bid every so many years to make sure that we're getting, you know, a good service as well as good pricing. You know, I've had questions in the past why aren't you going out to bid for a student information system? Well, you know, you wouldn't change that every so often. You want to maintain consistency. So there are items that are unique to the Board of Ed, but I think if you have somebody on the other end that you can communicate, you can demonstrate, and have an understanding of the operations of the school system, which I think we do have right now, it's not an issue. But when you have somebody on the other end who doesn't understand that not everything can go out to bid, and you know, there's maybe similar services or similar products, but not the one that is most aligned with what we want to do in Fairfield in the public schools.
Right. Yeah, and I can speak for the purchasing policy committee in that we wanted to make a policy that would work regardless of who's on the Board of Ed side and who's on the purchasing side. I mean, just hard and fast rules. And I'll give an example of the other side. The Board of Ed wants to go buy a new scoreboard for Ward High School. That goes to the purchasing authority, and the purchasing authority goes out and gets 3 bids. They go through the whole rigmarole, right? The lowest bidder, who's got good credit, the whole 9 yards. So that's that's a kind of an example of the things that, you know, are not so critical that we can go for best value. But there are, and I don't want to share details, but there are some services that we procure in this town for our most needed students, kids that really need special services, that there's like one person in the whole state that can do this stuff, or 2, and waiting a day or a week, it was detrimental to them. I mean, I learned a lot about your guys' job going through that service. So
yeah, and I think you mentioned a good point. Sometimes low bid doesn't necessarily mean
best value
or equal product or service. So I think that's always something that needs to be taken into consideration. You may go out to bid, we'll say for, field maintenance of the grass fields. You may get the low bid, but it could be a company that has, two guys and a push lawnmower, right? They don't have the capacity and they don't have the expertise, or they haven't done that before. So I think, those are when you have some tricky things but I think right now we do have people that do understand that we need to do an apples to apples comparison, not only just best pricing.
Great. Okay, let me open it up to the commissioners. Any question for Mr. Peterson or Mr. Testani? Commissioner Blanco.
I would probably, maybe I missed it, but could you cite a specific example where this hampered your ability to procure a product or a service that you couldn't fulfill a need that was timely?
Oh, good question. I can't think of anything really specific at the moment, but I would say that sometimes for things that we need to get done in the maintenance department over the summer, those kind of things, we'll have a short window to get those projects done. And sometimes we don't always have the time to go out through the entire process. And, there's people on state contracts that we can pull from and things like that. But, those are usually the things that become very time sensitive, because unlike the town where you can do, say, a sidewalk at any given time, some of the projects we need to do, especially that disrupt the flow of the school day, have to be done in that 5 or 6 week window.
That's good context. I think the like person Vitale has a question.
Yeah, and just this is going back again years. We were getting to be May or June. We were ordering educational materials that teachers needed to do curriculum work over the summer. And it was being held up in town purchasing, and not for, went out to bid, like questioning why are you doing this? Why do you need this? And when it got to be that level of questions, where there was some concern that that's really not the town's purview, that's the Board of Ed's purview of, why we are purchasing this. Things would go out, we would follow the purchasing policy, and then it would get stalled, the final sign off, questioning, why this book, why this curriculum, why do you need this software? And those type of questions, in my opinion, were addressed during the budget process by all town boards. And once there was approved budget to spend, if we followed the purchasing procedures, it shouldn't have been held up. We had instances going back again years ago where we had outside consultants not coming to service kids because they hadn't been paid. And that puts us in direct violation of students' IEPs. We could get sued for that. So it was getting to be really a dire situation, and very much appreciate the help of other town boards in correcting the issues back then. And thank Mr. Peterson and Mr. DeWitt and Ms. Charlton for just, taking the reins and getting this purchasing policy moving forward. And I'm happy to hear that it is, when you don't have those problems and it is effective, but wanted again, just to bring it before the commission, being that it is in the charter and it doesn't give the Board of Ed much flexibility at times. But it sounds like problem has been addressed. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoag.
Get on mute. So from what I'm hearing, it's sounding like it's a person, there was a person issue, or does the policy that we now have, the purchasing policy, prevent that from ever happening again? So that's really my question. And is there a way that we could create the charter wording so that if it's needed, doesn't have to be a charter revision, that we could it could just be changed as needed? Those are sort of two separate questions. But that's I don't know if that's,
I'm happy to answer, but I don't want to answer.
I'm asking.
I will answer. I'll give you my opinion. How's that? I think that the policy that's now in place takes a lot of the human equation out of it. But like everything else in life, anybody could really muck up a process if they really want to. So I think I think, and I'll let the superintendent please tell me I'm wrong or right here, but I think we've got two good things in place. We've got a really good policy, and we've got a good purchasing department. And with those two things in place now, I think they both feed off each other. I think that's the reason that there's success now.
I would agree 100%. And again, and I'm just speaking for myself. We process a lot of payments, a lot of requisitions in our budget. I like having some level of protection as a superintendent personally, because I learned this my first year, 29 years ago, from a principal that I worked for, and he was adamant that you don't want to be on the front page of the newspaper for even $5. And I just think having that level of protection, we're educators, we do have, we have a good CFO, but at the same time, it just eliminates any question marks that really are unnecessary, that could be just troublesome and distracting. And it could be something that was done in error and not malicious or not with any malintent. But at the same time, I think as long as we have that open line of communication with the purchasing department, we have that, that check there, it just provides a level of protection, and that I think is always helpful to just make sure that everything is done and there's no questions of things being, not on the up and up.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Wackerman?
Commissioner Hoag asked the question I was going to ask, but I would like to ask Chairman Peterson, since you expressed a concern I would have too, is since there was a personnel issue that was part of this, if you think there's anything that could be done that could, leave the purchasing power with the town, but somehow protect the Board of Ed from the issues that you had before. I don't know.
Well, it's hard. I don't really want to spitball since I'm not involved in day-to-day operations. I do think my experience with the massive renovation or rewrite that was done with the purchasing policy, it was very laudable and overdue. And my sense is that it's been working fine. So I'm a little inclined to put the emphasis on that it was the interboard communication. It was, the dedication of the purchasing policy committee on the Board of Finance that's ultimately has solved the problem. Can I foresee a situation where a change in personnel mucks up the process? Of course. Back to what Mr. DeWitt says, I think that's when you have people in the loop, that's always a possibility. But look, I will tell you that I was originally as a board member not eager at all to get involved in this, because we tend not to get involved in operational matters and leave those things to the superintendent. And it had gotten so bad 2 years ago that, as Ms. Vitale, suggesting, it was impacting things. The decisions that we had made at the board table were not able to be executed because of this block between us and the town. With that removed, I haven't thought about it in great detail since then. And I think that that's probably a testament to how well the policy was created and how it's being followed by both us and the town.
Thank you.
Any other questions by commissioners?
Oops. So I'm just reading the policy, the charter, and it exempts professional services. So that shouldn't have been a problem. But if
Um,
It,
there's a way to, wordsmith this 12.8, which is what we're talking about, in the current charter to,
12.8, purchasing authority.
if there's a way to make it so if there's a need for Board of Ed to do something very specific outside of what the town does, just, if there's some wordsmithing that could be done, that if you wanted to, and it's sort of enabling wording is what I'm trying to say. So if there's a way to word it so that if you needed to, you could go outside. I don't know if that's something you're interested in.
Well,
It doesn't sound like
well-
Mike is interested in it.
Yeah, well, 12.8. So let me make sure anything. All supplies, materials, equipment, other commodities, contracts for public works or services other than professional services required by the department, office, agency, blah, 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 of commission of the town, including the Board of Education, shall be purchased by the purchasing authority on a requisition in such a form as the selectmen may prescribe, signed by the department head of the office of the department. Other than professional, so the professional services portion that is not covered here, and maybe it is, maybe there is a little bit of a conflict there. The purchasing policy, I would say, would overrule in that regard. I mean, basically, to me, that statement says, no matter what you want to go buy in the town, you're going to have to go through the purchasing authority, and that's the way it is right now. There are certain things that are purchased by every department in this town that is within their that if within their budget they can go buy themselves. But the fire department can go buy a lot of stuff on their own, but when they go out to buy new turnout coats, they go out and get 3 bids. And it's driven by values that are inherently part of the purchasing policy. So I don't think 12.8 affects that, but I leave it up to the other commissioners to make a motion to change that wording if they think there's something to be changed there. Commissioner Treshik.
Well, one comment on the conversation we just had. I think we have to read 12.8 in conjunction with 6.1C1, which also refers to the Board of Selectmen approval of contracts. So I think together those two items together in the charter speak to how the purchasing works. And I guess that gets to my question I was going to have, actually asking Select Person Vitale that, and I read this, and I ask this because we've actually previously discussed raising the dollar threshold of contracts and term of contracts that the Board of Selectmen has to see. Does the Board of Selectmen see the Board of Education related contracts
no,
that exceed $10,000? They don't do that.
not for, I mean, for the capital projects, for like the buying a boiler.
Yep.
But no, we really for capital improvements, but we don't see all of the contracts that the Board of Ed.
Got it. Yeah.
executes.
Okay.
And that was addressed in the last revision, that there was the Board of Selectmen approving Board of Ed contracts, and the Board of Ed got legal counsel on that it really wasn't appropriate and it was actually withdrawn.
Right. Well, I mean, that is a carve out in the current language in the 2006 charter. So I was just curious, just trying to confirm that if the change we've previously agreed to make would actually help this situation, but I don't think it would because of what we just discussed. So thank you.
Yeah.
No, and in fact, there will be some point in this process where I'm going to recommend that 61C1 refer to the purchasing policy, because I don't believe the $10,000 threshold is the threshold that we've established in the purchasing policy.
Right. We've already voted and
Yeah.
agreed upon that it will
All
be
right. Oh,
20.
okay. So good. Okay.
Yeah. We made that couple months ago.
Okay, great.
Exactly that point, Chairman.
Thank you for reminding me what I did, what I've already done. Thank you. Commissioner Blanco.
Yeah, just going back to what the Superintendent Testani said, he said he found one incident and potentially Select Person Vitale said 1 or 2 incidences where that hampered execution of either a necessary service that might violate a code or compel us to have a lawsuit, or secondly, it would otherwise impact infrastructure. Is there a way, and it's an open parlay, I don't know the answer to that, is there a way to augment, like much like the other conversation we had a moment ago, is there a way to augment that so we can assist them? Right? Because they've identified a need. You know, I'm sensitive to that need. I'm just kind of a little biased because I just love teachers and I think they're the greatest. Being a dyslexic, I can tell you it was one of the greatest things to be able to read right, but that's neither here nor there. But so I wasn't sure if there was a way we could augment some of that functionality, you know, in a meaningful way to help those 2 incidences, whether it's a maintenance issue or there's a service that needs to be provided for a special needs child. You know, that's really compelling to me. So I open that up. I don't have an answer. I think I'd have to reread the charter again, and to think that through, Chair DeWitt.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I just want to be clear. I mean, Selectman Vitale has referred to some incidents in the past. I just want to make sure we're not trying to fix something that might have already been fixed. But yeah, I do agree with what you're saying, Commissioner Blanco. Any other comments, questions from commissioners? Okay, wonderful. I will make a sensitive body motion that we not have an independent Board of Ed purchasing authority, or we not recommend an independent purchasing authority. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Wackerman. Any further discussion on this topic?
Nope.
Okay, sounds good. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
700, Prue. Selectman Vitale, sorry, you're 0 for 2 tonight, but you know, I really appreciate your inputs. I appreciate the tenacity, and I appreciate all your time here tonight.
Well, as I said in the beginning, part of this was just to have the discussion and get it on the public record. So I very much appreciate the discussion. I was expecting it to pretty much go the way that it did, but I still,
Yeah, right.
but at least,
Well,
you know, we addressed it and made a
we're
decision.
delighted that you're there in this town helping.
Thank you.
Yes.
And thank you
you're
all
an
for your
Absolutely,
service.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely
you.
wonderful.
Superintendent Testani, Chairman Peterson, thank you for your time tonight, and
Thank you so
you're
much.
free to go. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a great night.
Good night.
Enjoy it.
Good night.
Okay. So still on agenda item 8, any additional topics? We certainly do still have topics under CRC topics here.
Just, Chair, we may want to go back and do the minutes at some point.
Yep.
Oh, sure. Let's do that. Thank you.
That was a great discussion, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a great, you're right. I agree.
Fantastic discussion. Great questions from everybody.
Agenda item 5 is to hear, consider, and act upon the draft minutes of January 22nd, which have been sent to you. Any comments, corrections?
I think Mary had one. You sent an email about asking if there had been a vote on the internal auditor. I think might have been your question, Mary?
Yes, and I hadn't had a chance to review the recording, but Chris, you do.
I thought there was a specific motion made by me to say that the internal auditor should report functionally to the Board of Finance and what's the word I'm looking for? Administratively to the CFO, and if there are any issues with the CFO, then report to HR. There was a very specific motion made. That is absolutely true.
Okay, because you do such a good job. You always do the sense of the body vote, so that it is not in the minutes. So maybe we can just check the recording.
Just a point on that. I'm trying to find it. Because my notes are, we initially discussed the internal auditor on the 7th. And then Chris, you came back on the 22nd with a follow-up question.
I came back on the 22nd because I think I had a conversation with
exactly
with Chairman Charlton and said, I just want to be clear, how do you think the structure should be? So hopefully I'm not confusing the two meetings.
Right. So
yeah, right here. Right there. Yep.
Yeah, so you came back on the 20. So I don't so Mary may be right, because I'm just quickly scanning the 7th and I'm not seeing internal audit vote recorded on this. I'm just trying to find it on the 7th.
It would have been on the 22nd that I made that motion. 100%.
Yeah, so
and it would have been I assume I would have made it right here. Yeah. Because we did not discuss it anytime afterwards.
I'm sorry, I didn't recall a motion, but
Of the few things that I can actually recall, I actually do recall making that motion because it was so important to me to make sure that we did that one. And it was I had spent some time talking to not only Chairman Charlton, but also to First Selectman Gerber about his recommendations about the secondary reporting on the administration, given if there was any internal audit issues.
I tend to agree with you, Chris. I mean, my notes I had, that we agreed, and generally I'll write that if we in fact had a vote. Although I think we'd want to validate that in the recording.
So we can hold these. We do one of two things. We can either hold these meetings, and I'd be happy to look that up and find it and send it to Prue, and we can vote on it next time.
I can look it up. I can look it up. It's at the beginning of the meeting.
It would have been at this, probably at this point under this agenda item number 5, Prue.
Yeah, that's where I have it. So I can just do that. I can just go up there on the recording. It's in the beginning.
Okay. So we'll hold these draft minutes until, oh, sorry, Commissioner Wackerman.
I wasn't at the meeting, so when I'm reading 7, the second bullet point in 7, I wonder if it could be explained better, because it says that you made a motion that unless otherwise stated in the charter or state statute, the first selectman shall designate a town officer to advise all appointed boards and commissions. And there's no real context for what that means. Like, what would they be advising about? Maybe there's a way to expect to, and I haven't had time to watch the meeting. I'm sorry. But
yes, that was a recommendation made by Commissioner Hoke, and I'll let her speak for herself. But I think the general premise was every town commission, board, whatever, should know that they have someone in. I don't know why my camera keeps going up, that should know that there's some town officer that's there representing them.
Oh, okay. So maybe be to like liaise, a town officer to liaise with appointed boards and commissions or represent them, or
Right.
I don't, that might make it clearer. But I wasn't at the meeting, so I will.
Yeah. Well, Commissioner Hoag, if you'd like to take a shot at that, I mean, I know we spent some time on that during that meeting.
I can't read that. I don't know how the wording is. Because when I read it, I thought, yep, that's what we said. But yeah,
Oh,
No, that's definitely what we said. We were very clear, believe me.
it took a long time to get there. But yeah, the concern that I espoused was that these boards and commissions and so forth are volunteers. And we want somebody who is a town employee to be able to provide guidance, oversight, do paperwork,
mhm.
little process things. And that's what we were trying to get at. So it's a liaison. Yes, is I guess.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it was kind of meant, I thought the intent was, the Board of Education, the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, they got a lot, the RTM, they got a
Mhm.
lot of horsepower. If you're
Mm-hmm.
on I keep using the Shellfish Commission, just, but if you're on the Shellfish Commission, you might not feel like you have a lot of horsepower. And if you need, we wanted to make sure there was some statement there affirming the fact that if you really need something, there's a path there.
That's a good idea. So maybe we can deal with it when we draft that section. That I just needed to understand what you meant. So thank you.
Well, right, and that's important for you in the wording for
Mhm.
sure, right?
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments on the minutes?
No, I'm
Okay, so we can address these next time, Prue, when you just update this 5, we'll address this at the next meeting. So thank you very much. Agenda item 6, I have no discussion on previous topics. I don't know if any other commissioners do.
I
Yes,
do.
Commissioner Hoag.
It's something Eric brought up, I think, and then also it was noted in our meeting minutes about Judy having another public meeting that is not required, but we had agreed in theory that we wanted to do it, and we thought that we should look to set that date in this meeting because we wanted enough lead time to get the word out, because we really, didn't get a lot of attendance at our first public meeting. So I wanted to, and that was broached, but we didn't have a full crew last time for one thing. And just wanted, and I think we said sometime in March, right, Eric? You had proposed some ideas on that.
Yes, and I like the idea and concept. I was thinking that perhaps the discussion I think the chair wants to have around kind of what topics to cover could be useful to have that, and then circle back to that around how would that fit in. Because I think that could be useful, just understanding kind of what else we're realistically going to get done. And what do we want to get done before we have that meeting, and that could then help us identify the proper date.
Yeah. I think looking at, what we can accomplish within our meeting.
Exactly.
I can put that on the next agenda to have that discussion for sure.
Well, I think the part of it's already on the agenda as far as the point on what the future topics.
I guess yes, future topics for sure. I don't know if I guess we could talk about the public session in future topics. So yeah, that's fine. Okay. Fine, we can defer to that agenda item. CRC, agenda item 7, CRC attorney or town attorney inputs. None have been requested. Everything we've asked of the town attorney and our CRC attorney have been provided. Which brings me back to 8, additional topics. We're still speaking about boards and commissions because this is a big one. Any thoughts on this? I'm sharing I think I'm still sharing, am I not?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, you are.
So we've ticked off a couple today, which is I think we ticked off a couple big ones, to be perfectly honest with you.
Right. I mean, I think as I look at it in just within boards and commissions, I think there are a couple that have been clearly identified as, let's say, challenging in the current environment. Specifically, I think the fire, or I'll put police in there too, but I think it seems to be more on fire, where there seems to be some disagreement between what the fire commission thinks they can do and the town thinks they can do. So I think that would be useful to get testimony and discuss that. And then I think the what is it? The WPCA, of course. The WPCA is one that is important to address and has received a lot of input and comment. Where once again that relationship between the board and commission and the town seems to be somewhat unclear. So to me, those are two that are very important to address within the boards and commissions that potentially could require some additional testimony or at least some homework on our part.
Great. So how do we have any topics we can address tonight? We got a little.
Oh, sorry, you're asking for today. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
I'm not
well,
letting you
sure.
guys off at 9 o'clock. Come on, we got too much work.
Well, sure. Yeah, we can guess. Oh, sorry, my bad. We definitely can keep going. I think the like the flood prevention could be, and the human services and disability. So maybe skip over fire and
Agreed.
in police. So my apologies, Chair, for missing your point there on what to cover. So yeah, so the flood, there's kind of there's 2 points. One, the second one listed, yes, where you have where you've selected the cell. There were some changes in state statute that and then I think passed by the ordinance now on the RTM that now should be reflected in the charter. Essentially, that's kind of the core
Right.
point. And then there was a couple of suggestions around having the director of the DPW be part of the flood prevention and erosion control board, I think it is. So those are the core topics that we have feedback on.
Yeah, if we want to dig into flood prevention, and I don't know how, there's a long name I know now
They
from.
go by verb, just
Yeah.
so.
Let's bring up those emails and let's plow through a couple of those topics. And I have, let's see. Whoops, sorry. Do you have the date of that inquiry? Oh, 11/14 and 26.
Yes.
Yes.
This is a long note. I'm going to need a little help on this. Where to start with this one?
Well, I think the one of the core points is section 1 or paragraph 1 there,
Okay.
where it was in the previous recommended charter revisions that didn't pass. So now I guess the RTM has passed the changes. And so there seems to be, it sounds like there's a disconnect between the existing ordinance and what the charter says. That's what I'm reading this as saying.
The main updates were requested. So we no longer need the charter revision to help us comply. We would ask that the language in the updated charter reflect the language of the ordinance. Now, so I guess I'd ask the question. We've had many times code versus charter. If the language is in an ordinance, do we need it in the charter? Or should it be in two spots? I mean, I'm not a fan of anything being in two spots because that means when the ordinance gets updated, which it certainly was, then we would have to go back at some point and update the charter and vice versa.
Well, and also the charter is the governing document. I mean, it has precedence over ordinance. So technically, I think you could argue we're not in compliance because the charter is what sets the rules.
So, and I'll defer to Commissioner Wackerman, if the ordinance is then put under the code, that solves that problem, does it not?
You mean into the charter? If it's put
No,
into
into the code.
It is the code with.
It is, it's
Oh.
part, and yeah, the ordinance means it's part of the code.
Right.
And
So doesn't that, if we removed it here, would that not just by just defer to, would that not become the ruling document if it's in the code?
it does in this case. Eric, you're right that usually the charter would supersede, but something in the charter allows, or I think it was in the state statute that created this, allowed the RTM to make an ordinance to change it, even though it was in the charter. So it does.
Okay.
So we don't really have to change it. And it's that confusing thing where throughout we see boards and commissions in the charter that aren't in the, or in the ordinances that aren't in the charter and stuff. But it is, as it is now, it is legit. And we could just echo the language of the RTM, of the ordinance in the charter, but we don't have to.
Which is echoing the statute,
Right.
which supersedes both our charter.
Which I was just gonna say, so why don't we just point to the statute? Doesn't that just solve everything?
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to because we comply with the statute with this ordinance. I don't know.
And
I'm
the,
trying to, I'm desperately trying to find the flood and erosion.
it's 10-12.
10, 12.
Thank you.
And
Yeah,
it
and
does
this
point
does
to the
point, yep.
statute too.
Yeah, exactly.
So it does point to it. It says,
Mhm.
Well,
Although we probably should update the name.
I was just gonna say, we
Yeah.
much to Commissioner Hoag's comments earlier meetings, the name is no longer, it's now this, right? Is that not
Mhm.
correct, Commissioner Hoag?
Yeah.
yeah,
You're right.
Maybe a suggestion could be, this might be a good thing for our lawyers. Just if we were to take a sense of the group here and agree that we want to have the charter reflect and not conflict, we could ask the external lawyers to just come back with conforming language that fixes it.
And
Yeah.
provide them the ordinance?
Yeah.
I'm fine with
Wait.
that.
Yeah,
Same,
Great.
sure.
yes,
I'll make a quick sense of the body to change in the existing charter the words flood and erosion control board, everywhere those words are mentioned, to now read flood prevention, comma, climate resilience and erosion control board. May I have a second?
second.
Second by Commissioner McCann. Any discussion on that?
It states the main updates we were requesting included a revised name, revised number of board members and minor updates. Are there other changes that have to be made to the charter?
Probably if we make the name change, I would say you might as well have them make the
Make
whole
the whole
change so
thing.
that
Right.
it reflects.
Right. I
So
guess
should we just, so maybe we should just say section 10.12, would just ask our attorney to update that section on our behalf based on the ordinance?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll amend my sense of the body. Let's I make a sense of the body motion that our CRC lawyer, Mr. Bucksbaum, review the town ordinance from 2024. Commissioner Wackerman, yes, or
Yes, 2024.
dealing with flood and erosion control board in section 10.12 and recommending new language based on that ordinance.
I guess could we also say to make sure it also complies with the state statute that required all this?
And complies with the state statutes. May I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Potentially that's implied, but also just make sure the name is updated in the rest of the charter.
Mhm. Good point.
Okay. All in favor?
I
Aye.
Good recommendation. Then that takes a little bit off of our
Mhm.
Commissioner Wackerman's plate, even though it's her jam. But it does it does get a little gets a little off our plate and pushes it back. So
It's good.
I think now I haven't read this in a bit. Is this really going to also there's some other
Well,
things.
and then if you want to keep on flood, then go down to number 6.
Yeah, thank you.
And that was there's another comment from Mr. Hurley on some date. Where is that date? The 23rd, January 23rd, that makes a similar suggestion.
Oh, so Mr. Hurley is the town engineer.
The last point, the last sentence.
Yes, I would like to offer for 9 points. So he's specifically for 9.7.
7.
Should the DPW director provide technical advice? That's a question.
Yeah, Becky puts it.
This is a little different, right? Because I think Ms. Bennell is saying, I want to make him go to all the meetings as a core member.
Sure. Okay.
And Bill's comments are, should he provide tech? Well, I guess if we're going to force him to go to all the meetings, he should provide technical advice while he's sitting there.
Maybe he does already provide technical advice.
I'm sure he does. Yeah.
Yeah.
My suggestion would be not just naming the director, but or their agent, because Bill Hurley is really going to be more likely giving technical advice, not as an engineer.
Well, this is a question, so I'm not. I was more fun than anything. I guess the real question is, do we want to add something that? I guess I want to use the word forces to attend all now flood prevention, climate resilience, and erosion control boards as a core member. This is done with most other boards.
Well, I think what she is suggesting there is, if you look at 9.7B4,
yeah,
be an ex officio member without vote of the town plan and zoning commission with respect to planning and the parks and recreation committee. Now, maybe she is suggesting a vote. I'm not clear on that part, but one way you could do it is you could essentially amend 9.7B4 to essentially put in the flood board there. And
well,
as
an ex officio member, an ex officio member is different than a core team member. So maybe someone can help me here. A core team member to me would have voting rights. Ex officios do not have voting rights.
No, and I get that. But also that last sentence she has in that paragraph you have highlighted, this is done with most other boards and commissions and meetings and such. Granted, I don't really know, but my assumption was in most other commissions, the department heads are there, but they're out there as ex officio.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think they usually have the power to vote.
Right. So I was kind of
no, that's absolutely true, right? I'm just saying her recommendation, when I see core team member, that implies to me voting. So
yeah, I hear that, but I felt it was modified by the next sentence where essentially do it like it's done with the other boards and commissions, which is ex officio.
Mhm.
So that's why I was assuming it really wasn't like a voting thing, but I might be wrong.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to ask our lawyers if a staff member can have a vote on a board or commission. I'm not sure that they can.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'm willing to say ex officio, but again, I mean, I was ex officio to the RTM. I did not attend every RTM meeting. This comment from Ms. Bennell is, I want him to be at every meeting. Now, if
Or delegate, so, you know.
or delegate, right? Absolutely, right? That's a different thing than being just ex officio.
Mhm.
Are we really going to
State-
say in the charter that someone has to attend meetings?
Yeah.
Like,
It's
Yeah,
hard to say, yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Now, you know, there's, you know, we were talking about it before, but there is language that says the one of the selectmen has to be a liaison to the WPCA. Maybe we extract that language and say, the director of DPW or their delegate is a liaison to the Flood and Erosion Control Board. That's a little more to me than ex officio, but it doesn't go as far as saying you have to be there every meeting.
To me, a liaison attends to be able to report back to where they came from. So it's more passive to me. I don't know.
So that's a good point. So I guess Miss Bennell's point is she not only wants the director of DPW or their delegate to attend, she wants them to have real input.
Mhm.
I think that, so yeah, so that's not ex officio either, right? Because ex officio is, you know,
Maybe that's another question for our lawyers, like what can we, you know, or maybe Brian has seen this in other charters, because I know you've worked on charters, Brian. Something that kind of asks the staff member to be an active part of the discussion. Or maybe just that's a hope.
I don't think you see that a lot because I don't think like it's typically something that has to be said and let
Yeah.
alone has to be put in a charter. I mean,
Right.
like
just
Eric
hope-
Eric pointed out that, you know, provide technical it's in the charter where he has to provide his responsibility is providing technical advice to, you know,
Mhm.
boards and commissions. And I mean, I think you sort of just leave that up to the selectmen. That would be my,
Yeah.
I mean, you could designate them if they're not already, you could designate them as the designated staff person. I think
Mhm.
that's reasonable, but requiring them to attend every meeting, that's crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
There may not
I
be
mean-
something that they need to attend for, and you know, we're just
yeah,
spending the
yeah,
town's
I'm with
money.
you.
Mm-hmm.
See, it also says in the charter 9.7B3, the director of public works shall be the chief technical advisor of the town and all departments except for the Board of Education in all matters concerning the physical development of the town and the design, construction, and maintenance of the physical plant. So that's a little different than what she's talking about here. This is but maybe that's the place to add this. Be the chief technical chief technical advisor.
So it's
And
already in the
instead-
charter, that part. It's
Sorry?
just, well, then it is in the charter without the meeting portion of what Becky's asking for. Right? She's asking for.
The way I'm reading the charter, it's more it says the physical development of the town. The flood prevention, well, I guess that's a physical thing too, right? Flood prevention is a physical thing that we do, right?
Yeah, it's the tide gates, it's
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like 9.7B3 kind of covered this, with the exception of the participation as a core team member is put.
I mean, it's more, and we also covered it in the point that, you know, we have a staff person or a staff department assigned to each board or commission in our last meeting. I think this really is an outcropping of frustration that they're not getting the support that they want, and it's really more a management thing, not a charter thing.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
I
probably.
agree.
I agree with Commissioner Hogan.
agree.
That's exactly the way I
Uh,
read it.
so I feel like we're taking no action on this.
Yep. I
Now,
mean, that's something that just have to, sorry, Chair, that's something they have to like kind of work out,
Mm,
you know?
it's very much like the Board of Education was saying about, you know, not only is there a policy now, but there's different people that are more in tune, I'll say, with the
mhm,
needs of the Board of Education. A department of DPW that might be more in tune with the needs of the flood erosion control, you know.
mhm.
I don't think there's anything, but I agree. Other than the change that we talked about before, I don't think we take any action in this. Now, this is making me think about, do we think, Commissioner Treshik, I'll ask for your expertise. Do we have enough things that talk about the director of DPW to bring the acting director of DPW to testify? Now, I know there is a recommendation which I strongly support, about the requirements of the director of DPW, and that he has to be a professional engineer. Are there enough topics to bring him in? Because we could maybe ask him about this if there is. If there's not, then we could just address it without.
I think that's the only other DPW top. Now, unless WPCA, if it starts to get into that at all.
Mhm.
But I think the key topic with DTW is the professional engineering designation.
Mhm.
Okay. Do we want to take up that topic now that we're here? Because that could be. We definitely have to take up this topic, right?
Mm,
Oh yeah, that's
might
gonna be
as well.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know who specific. So hold on.
There's a lot of comments on this one.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
What topic is it under? Is it under board? Yeah.
So this is under positions. It
Oh.
is row 53, but number 51. And it starts with the first selectman's perspectives, asking us to review and evaluate eligibility and qualifications for town officers.
mhm.
That includes fire chief, police, town attorney, and then C, and that one, review required credentials for director of public works and determine if professional engineering designation is still a reasonable and practical requirement.
Mhm.
That's the request that we need to discuss.
Mr. Hurley did not say. What I've got Ms. Bennell's thing open. That's the engineering position. Here we go. I feel a large number of projects on the town's capital have strong engineering component. Thus, it is very important that the Department of Public Works has an engineering degree. I have heard the counter argument that is important that role. Okay.
Well, in the charter that we were just looking at, 973, that the DPW director be chief technical advisor of the town and all departments, so forth and so on. If that is what we're sticking with, then it certainly makes sense to me they should be an engineer. I don't see.
Yeah.
Well, but let me take you to the real sentence here. 9.7a. The Director of Public Works shall be appointed by the First Selectman and shall be a professional engineer registered in the state.
Mhm.
A professional I have an engineering degree. I have a mechanical engineering degree. I am not a professional engineer. A professional engineering degree is a much, much different thing than an engineering degree.
What is it more? Is it more education or
Yeah.
what is?
It is,
It's more of a license in a way.
it's more of a license. Yes, that's, I mean, but it technically, it probably is more education because you have to have, you have to take a very, it's like taking the bar. I mean, it's a big, I'm sure it's not as onerous as the bar. For everyone who's taking the bar. But it's, as engineers go, this is hard, right? And it's it's more based on the civil kind of criteria, so again, should the person have an engineering degree? Yes. Professional engineering degree is the problem. Now, my apologies. My stupid camera just keeps kicking out. I'll just give you my opinion on this. The director of Public Works is a huge administrative task, right? Under his control, under the town's control, we have people like Bill Hurley, who is indeed a professional engineer, right? As a former Board of Finance guy and a taxpayer, I'd rather have the DPW director have a regular engineering degree like I do, but have a lot more program management skills than needing a professional engineering degree. There's a lot there's a lot of sides in there. We could maybe Commissioner Tresha can help me pull some of the comments up, but the current director, who I think most people think is doing a good, sorry, he's an acting director. He's only acting because he does not have a professional engineering degree. I don't know if he has a mechanical engineering degree. I don't know if he has any engineering degree, but he's only acting because he doesn't have a PE, and he's been doing this for like 30 years. And I think a lot of people think he's done a good job in other towns and in Fairfield. So that's the end of my speech. We can look at the comments and.
I guess though, if you don't have that in there, you're lucky enough to have him now with all this experience, but this could allow you to hire anybody with some managerial experience and no engineering background, seems like they need to, he may have replaced the degree with practical experience that makes him very qualified, but it seems like there should be qualification like that for this role. I don't know.
Right, and I kind of agree with both points that both Chris and Karen just raised, and actually in Mr. Hurley's first email on January 23rd, he actually proposes a pretty interesting language that
Oh, is that right?
yeah kind of gets at that.
Not this one, yeah.
Yes, yeah, that is the one. And the second paragraph of A.
Could you make that a little bit bigger, please? Thank you so much. Whoever's controlling the screen.
Got this big freaking thing here.
I don't need.
You can't see my screen with all your faces, right? All you can see is
Yeah, if you
the.
go up in the little plus, yeah, there were the plus right there that you're on. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
We have commission deeming this.
That could be a good solution.
Something on the lines of, keep the current requirement, and then, but yeah, if you can't find someone, then the HR director can recommend to the Board of Selectmen that the requirement be waived, and a director, former director of a town of a similar size, whatever, that type of thing. You could get the language like that. I agree with Chris's point on managerial experience is really important. I think that just, given the fill pile, given the, pavilion kind of construction outside of the fill, all those things like that, there's just removing engineering requirements entirely, I think is not a good move on our part.
And it looks like above, Bill Hurley said he recommends keeping the language as is.
Yes,
That's his
exactly.
first choice.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
I would recommend keeping the language, canvassing other municipalities. Most have the same requirement.
Yeah, for liability is a good point too.
Yeah. I mean, somebody has to have
Yeah.
engineering background and be a registered engineer.
Mm.
That's just, so if it's not the director who is more managerial, if that's how you're taking it, then, and Bill Hurley is our engineer. He's
Mhm.
not going to be here forever. So that spot needs to be replaced.
Right.
Bill Hurley has got to be or whoever fills that has got to be a professional engineer. He's the
Mhm.
engineer. The,
Right.
the inference, no, it's more than an inference. The language says that not only has the town engineer got to be a professional engineer, but so does the guy who's in charge of running the administrative functions and everything else for Department of Public Works,
Mhm.
which I think is a bit of a stretch. I would never think to take that off the town. In fact, I'm looking for the town engineer requirements, and I don't think they're in here.
I don't think so either.
I think it's
Mm.
maybe because that person works for the Department of Public Works, I
Right.
think, right?
Mm.
Maybe not.
I mean, maybe it is worth asking John to come in.
And wouldn't the DPW director essentially have like a veto power over the town engineer? Like,
Mhm.
so, I mean, I don't
Well-
even understand how he could not have an engineering degree. Like he could literally veto Bill Hurley and say, well, we're not going to look into that pavilion issue.
Mhm.
And then the town could incur tens of millions of dollars of liability.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna if we're gonna build a new bridge, and I think Bill Hurley, as the town engineer, looks at the specification and says, "Yep, everything looks cool here." Do we really want the Department of Public Works director to say, "No, I'm going against the town engineer"?
Well, does Bill work for the DPW director? I don't know what the order is,
If
but
I had an org chart,
Mm.
which we've
Yes,
speculated,
engineering is under DPW.
that is true, you said?
That is true, yes.
I mean, if the DPW director was an engineer, I would want him to double check. I trust Bill completely, but I would want him to be double checking what people are doing, right? He should agree.
But again, we're talking about a charter that's going to be years in use, and it's not going to be Bill Hurley, and it's not going to be John
Right.
Marsilio, it's not going to be all these people we know right now. So
Right.
it's got to be more theoretical and generic.
Mhm.
That
Well,
discussion.
Well,
Yep.
I agree, and I think what Bill has done is given us an eloquent way to maybe skirt this topic a little bit, right?
If we feel like we should.
Exactly.
Just
Well, yeah.
one,
Oh no, absolutely. I'm sorry, Commissioner Blanco, please.
Yeah, look, I mean, a little bit in my wheelhouse with development. Technical aspects of infrastructure, right, should always be quantified and qualified by a design professional, typically a PE, right? You're going to want that person looking at whether it's a pumping system, a structural system along those lines. The administration can certainly flow up to a business person or a manager, but I would hate to see that obviated. I don't know. I think I agree with Commissioner Wackerman. We touch it. I don't know.
Mm.
I'm just, again, I just throw it out there. I'm thinking about it, not making not
so,
taking a position.
I also am not sure on my position yet on this, but I think this is one where, even though it did generate some real pushback last time, the 22 revision
Mhm.
had an interesting way of doing it. My read on how they did it. I'm looking at the one that's not redlined, the clean copy of the 22 revision.
What
So page
section?
page 43,
Oh, thank you.
7.6 is Director of Public Works.
Yes.
And well, do they do two things?
Oh,
One,
yeah.
they point back to 6.2B, which I'll come back to, but then also in 7.6B3, it says the town engineer is the chief technical advisor to the town and departments. So they specifically says the town engineer, which
Yeah.
I don't think is defined in this document, but presumably the town engineer is an engineer. I'm just guessing. And then what they do in 6.2 is they essentially say that HR will use nationally accepted professional standards and best practices for every applicable field and review that periodically. And so they don't actually enumerate it. And so they rely on two things. One, that the HR department would do that. Now,
Right.
what's the normal expectation around a DPW lead? Does that in fact require PE or not? And then they would ensure the engineering expertise through the statement that the town engineer is the engineering person expert for the town, the technical advisor for the town, as opposed to our current charter, which I think appoints the DPW head as the technical lead.
Yeah. I like what they've done here, referencing back to 6.2B a lot. Because what that does is that takes that one sentence out that says the director of DPW has to be a professional engineer, right? And it pushes it back to a job description that's filed away in HR, and that job description says you can be a PE or you could be this or you could be, right? And it gives a lot more it's less prescriptive in the charter, which I think is good, but it also gives what I think has been lacking in town for a long time is HR having a bunch of job descriptions for every job in town. I mean, we need them, right?
Yes.
100%.
I think, I mean, it was controversial, this question, right? And when this version was being done. And I think there was, a real encouragement to make it work so that the current person could stay. And I don't know if, I do agree with you that having, putting the onus on HR to make sure they know what the qualifications are makes sense. But I mean, should we also have, like Bill Hurley says, it's typical to have this requirement for this position, right? In that comment.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it should be an engineer, but
Well, again, I think, and I think this gets to my point with Miss Bennell's note. I'm not sure everyone who is looking at this understands the difference between an engineer and a professional engineer. They're, like I said, engineering degree, not a professional engineer. I mean, big difference. I mean, I never even studied to be a professional engineer, So, I really, in this case, I think it's an elegant solution. That, oh, look who's just come on board, Ms. Bennell. Would you like to comment?
hi, Becky.
Hi, I'm Becky. So I
Thanks
just
for
got
now.
on and I understand you're talking about the town engineer, the town DPW.
Mhm.
The
And whether-
requirement for the the requirement for the director of public works to be a professional engineer.
Yeah, so I am the my name is Becky Bunnell. I am the chair of the Flood and Erosion Control Board. We do a lot of work, obviously, with the engineering department. We report our key contact, obviously, is with the engineering and DPW department. It is my opinion that it would be very, very, very helpful if either the DPW head or the assistant head of DPW was a professional engineer, because so many of our town projects have to do with engineering. And I think there is I think there's a knowledge base there that is really important we don't have a town engineer the way a lot of other towns do. We have,
Who's Bill Hurley?
he is the engineering manager, but there is such a thing as a town engineer, which other towns do have. And I also, and I can't make a determination on this, but I will give you a sense of what other towns do. Other towns have, elevate the Bill Hurley to a town engineer, and then all the project managers, which is the new department that they're filling out this new department called project management. All those live within engineering normally. In other towns. So all of the project managers would be underneath the engineering head, the town engineer, as our clerk of works, which is another version of a project manager that a lot of towns do have, a slightly junior version of that. And so because so many of our town projects are engineering driven, I really think it's critical that you have that level of expertise at a high level within the organization that it reports into. So, I mean, it may not need to be the DPW director. It could be the assistant director of DPW that has the engineering degree, but I really think one of them needs to have that expertise because all of our road construction projects, all of our, tide gate construction projects, a lot of our coastal engineering projects, they're all engineering. So that's my view.
Understand.
Sitting from the seat I sit in, that's my view. I'm happy to answer any questions if that's helpful.
No, thank you for calling in.
Okay.
I do have a question, Ms. Bonnell. And actually, Chris, if you don't mind, it goes back to the previous topic. Just your recommendation you sent in to to us talked about asking the director of DPW to be a quote unquote core team member of the flood board. That is number 6 at the end there, Chris. Thanks.
Or their delegate. Yes. I mean,
sure. Or their delegate, but we were just clarifying because it seems like most of the boards and commissions where there is a department head as a part of the commission that is usually through ex officio or were you asking for that person to come in and have a vote or be there?
I actually would like them to attend the meetings. But they could absolutely be ex officio. It seems to me that a lot of the other boards and commissions have their department contact in the meetings and either co-run them with the chair or play a role within the meetings. And I think that would be very helpful for flood and erosion to have that same level. I would frankly expect the DPW head to delegate it to their town engineer, frankly, to be the point person just because so much of our work is engineering driven. But I would defer to whoever the head of DPW wanted to put in.
Got it. But ex officio would potentially be a potentially appropriate category.
Yes, but attending the meetings, I think is the key.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're right. Yes.
Yeah, and we were debating that. It's I think it might be overstepping the boundaries of the charter to say, this person must attend all meetings of the Flood and Erosion Control Board, right?
Well, it seems that like the Conservation Commission, Tim Bishop attends that, Solid Waste and Recycling, John Cattell attends that. I mean, I obviously don't attend all of the boards and commission meetings, but it seems like a lot of the ones that have a technical side to them do have the person within the town that is doing those projects be participating. And again, all the flood and erosion projects tend to be overseen by either the project management team or the town engineers.
It might be something that the administration has to talk to the director of DPW about, get sort of they probably should be going, but we can't really put that in the charter. I think it's more
administrative.
Yeah.
More functional, if you will. Yeah, right. Best practice. That's the word I was looking for. It's because I can tell you there's nothing in here that says conservation has to 100% attend anything in any meetings, right? So the conservation director, I think he or she attend because he or she thinks it's the right thing to do. Should be the same thing here. So I think it would be a long putt for us to mandate attendance at meetings. but I
So
mean,
maybe there is some best practice guidelines that you guys could pass along as part of your work, but not as an official charter. If that's something that if you're not
yeah,
gonna.
I don't hate the word best practice, to be honest with you, maybe.
And frankly, I don't know how you're gonna be dealing with this new project management group that I guess is being formed. I don't know if that's gonna be in the charter or not, but it could be that since they're now having these project managers run a lot of these projects that would be flood and erosion projects, that maybe that would be the more appropriate person to delegate to be in our meetings.
Well, I have to tell you, I know nothing about these people. I don't know if anyone else does. I mean, maybe Commissioner Wackerman is a little closer to it, but I am not aware of any program or project management dedicated group.
It's a newly forming group.
Brand
that
new,
I think
yeah.
is being
Bill just started
planned,
it.
to be grouped, to be formed as a separate group.
And it's formed under what? A who or what?
It's under
I'll-
finance now.
It's
Eli-
working group now, right?
Eli Gazelle, they're being paid out of engineering still because it hasn't been officially formed. So they still all technically are paid out of engineering dollars. But I don't know where the intent is for them to sit, whether they ultimately will sit in finance, whether they ultimately sit under DPW. I mean, as I said, other towns all have them sit in engineering.
And it's a
And
project
they're
management
virtually
working
all-
group?
They're virtually all engineering projects, although, yeah, I mean, even the construction projects, which I think, presumably, I think the Board of Ed building committees would now be done by this. Although it's a little unclear whether the Board of Ed is giving up the idea of a town resident building committee. I'm not actually sure. So I don't have all the details of this. I just know that Eli Gazal is the head of it right now, the newly forming group.
Eli Gazal?
Yeah.
It was in Bill's State of the Town address. He mentioned it. We did get something recommended to us by Jim Brown, who recommends a lot of stuff to us. But there's a model practices for municipal governments by the Connecticut Town and City Management Association. And it does talk about, for DPW, certain things, but it goes department by department. And I think it is something that, not that it's a charter thing, but I think it's something that we should pass on to the First Selectman's office to take a look at and consider at possibly HR. So I don't know if anyone else has read it, but it's like a checklist for each department and what they should and shouldn't, what they should be doing as, being the best in their field. And it does talk about
Oh, yeah.
flood.
I have not read it, but we can certainly pass that along. Back to the topic, Department of Public Works, professional engineer. Do we want to look at more comments? Do we want to?
Bill Bill's comment is that he wants that removed, the engineering degree for DPW director.
Bill Gerber.
Our first selectman requested
Yes.
that.
Bill Hurley says he wants to keep it with a caveat, right?
Right. Too many bills, sorry.
What were the other comments? Let me just, I
many
don't want to short this.
I don't think we've gotten any comments that would support getting rid of the designation, with the exception of the first selectman's kind of implication in what was passed by the board.
Got it. So all these other ones here are basically saying
Keep it.
keep it.
Yes.
Hmm.
Well, the intern benchmarking was a little unclear in this one. That wasn't really a clear practice, because some charters just don't define it, and then some do. So it wasn't really a clear benchmark in that case.
Okay.
In
So
term-
I might be opening up a bigger can of worms than I want to at 9:56 at night. But I do have to say, I am enamored with this 6.2 B clause that basically pushes this, and I'm assuming all the other job descriptions, back to human resources. Well, it pushes it back to general statutes or special act shall be prepared by the Director of Human Resources. I am enamored with that, and taking out the specific reference to any specific degree or specialty in the charter. So what are the commissioner's thoughts on that?
I'm torn.
Me too.
I agree with you from a simplicity. I agree with you also because I think the importance of the supervisory and managerial capability of managing a large department with a lot of people and a lot of money. I think there's a lot of blowback though. It's just, if you think about getting something passed, is this the hill we want to die on? I don't know. I
Well, I
think
don't
this
know.
one's
So
going to be
is it-
controversial.
Is it more controversial to say, I want to define this within HR? Or is it more controversial to say, let's just leave it in because it's been our past practice? Because I can tell you from personal experience, and maybe Commissioner Wackerman can give her personal experience. Department of Public Works Director manages a lot of things, and I think technical. I'm sure he's been involved in technical stuff with Bill Hurley and all, but I think 85% of their job is administrative. Should they have a working knowledge of engineering? Absolutely. But I think that's like 15% of their job. And to base hiring a person, and by the way, we've been trying to hire a replacement. It has not, I mean, I think Bucky's been director for what? 6 years, Karen? Right?
I think Brenda hired him, right?
Yeah, okay, so call it 6 years, right? I thought they were looking for a PE to replace him, and haven't been able to come up with one. So maybe that's a question for First Selectman Gerber, if they've not replaced it because they couldn't find anybody or what. But
I also think that, it may require a revision of the authorities too. I mean, if that's something that we're looking into, removing the PE requirement, I think we'd have to review the rest of the responsibilities, because it says chief technical advisor of the town, all of its departments in 9.7B3, and then at the request of the selectmen, furnish technical advice reasonably required for the physical functioning of the town and its government. I mean, I don't know how you be the chief technical advisor for the town without a PE. I'm not saying that it couldn't work. I just think you just have to rework this section. So like, I think Ms. Bennell, I forget who said it, but like you make the town engineer or the director of engineering the chief technical advisor.
Mhm.
And I think that's what they've done in the 2022 version.
It is. Yeah, they
Okay.
did the town engineer.
7.6 again points to and I'm just going to go on record. I'm not saying we should eliminate the PE requirement. I'm saying that maybe it's better off if that requirement lies within the document in HR rather than lies within the town charter. That's one. But in the 2022 version of the charter revision, the roles, the duties have been updated, and they do not include being the technical expert. In fact, they say, in fact, these, as I think someone said, 96B3, sorry, 7.6B3, they specifically say it's the town engineer who should be the chief technical advisor. Now, by the way, the chief engineer better have a job description in HR that says he or she has to be a professional engineer. So, like I said, I'll defer to what you guys want. I really like the idea of all the jobs going back into HR with a job description, because it kind of forces that hand a little bit. And I know we've talked about this a couple times, making the chart a little simpler. This does make the chart a little simpler. I'll make a motion, and then you guys can go from there. I'm trying to find what section Department of Public Works is.
In,
Director of Public Works.
you're in the
I
current,
make a motion that we replace in its entirety section 9.7 of the current charter with section 7.6 of the 2022 charter revision, to include the reference to section 6.2b within the 2022 charter revision. So this is going to have a far-reaching effect. This is going to not only change the public part, the director of public works role. It's going to then tie back to 6.2, which basically says the authority and qualification of appointed town officers. Which I think, frankly, and I would amend my motion to say, not only would I would add 7.6 and replace, I would also add in its entirety section 6.2 of the charter revision from 2022. Because even in 6.2a, I think there are very good I think there's important things that were added in there. So I've made a motion. If anyone would like to second it, we can discuss. If no one would like to.
Excuse
Second
me, Chair, Chair DeWitt, can I please read you what I've written just to make sure that I've gotten all the points?
Yes, please.
Okay. 9.7, Chris made, I'm sorry, Chairman DeWitt made a motion to replace in its entirety with section 7.6 of 2022 charter revision and section 6.2a from 2022 charter revision.
Section 6.2 in its entirety.
but
Oh,
you're,
and
you didn't say what you're replacing. You're replacing 9.7.
9.7, yeah.
I did say 9.7.
Yes, she did. She
Uh-huh.
said we're replacing 9.7 with 7.6.
I didn't hear that.
I
Sorry.
didn't hear it either.
And we're also going to, because 7.6 references 6.2, I recommend that section be added as well. Somewhere that's up to where Commissioner Wackerman would like to put it in the document.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner McCann. Discussion?
Well, I'm looking at all the other entries in the section 7, and I don't see any of the other ones referencing the 6.2. So I don't, they didn't. Kind of odd. So, you know, it doesn't have that global effect that you're talking about, Chairman DeWitt.
Qualification of appointed on.
Actually, fiscal officer
Yeah,
and
fiscal
controller,
officer.
7.4A.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the
References it.
controller does, yeah, right, yeah.
All right, well, that's why I'm trying to eyeball it real fast.
Not the building official.
Oh, there's 6.2. Yeah, they only go to 6.2.
Yeah, you're right, a lot of them don't.
Which is kind of strange because
Hmm.
I think your idea about it being a global thing is a great idea, but they don't seem to have done that for some reason.
So the fiscal officer and the controller do have 6.2 reference. If I don't have the document up, I could do a number search and look for there.
Yeah, but eyeballing it, I agree, Mary. I'm only seeing the 2.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Oh, I don't know what that means. It's just that it's not got the same flavor as we're discussing it. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, maybe it's not as global an effect as I think it is, but
It should be.
Should be.
And just by the way, one interesting point in the 2022 suggested revision, so 7.6B4 establishes the director of DPW as
Oh.
ex officio member of the flood
yes, I
board.
see that. That's absolutely right.
FYI.
Yeah.
So Becky, look at
Or
that,
say
Becky.
designates.
I'm
Or the
taking
designate.
care of you too, Becky. Yeah.
You got it.
Sorry, Miss Benell. I shouldn't call you Becky. Yeah, that so absolutely right.
There you go.
The 6.8, not to get off track, but 6.8 also resolves Becky's other issue.
What's
Hmm.
that?
6.8 of the 2022 revision.
Oh yeah, it sure does, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Basically, the department head should be supporting their boards or commissions.
Right.
Interesting.
And it shall, which would make Becky happy. It says it's mandatory.
Right.
Well, yeah, 6.7 and 6.8 definitely need to. We need to definitely talk about them again because one of the things that I think we really have to talk about is removal of office, and that's 6.7. So
Mm-hmm.
Well, that 6.8 is that basic discussion we had last time about
it is very similar to that. Yes.
Yeah.
and that wording may be better than what we came up with. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I consider.
Any further discussion on my motion?
It's growing on me, Chris.
I can see your face, Karen. I know you're close. Listen. If you like to defer, I'm again. It is 10 o'clock at night. I think we've had a really good meeting. I think we've checked off a lot of boxes
Yep.
today. This is a lot to digest. So if you want to defer to the next meeting, I'm totally fine with that.
I make a motion to defer the next meeting.
I second
Okay.
that.
And any discussion on the defer? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, very good. So let us do this. Let's get to the agenda item 9, which is discussion on next topics. So hold on, let me get my notepad here. So next topics,
Bye. Becky.
we're going to start with DPW
Yep.
director and in my my motion.
Does that mean we want to ask Bucky to come to the meeting?
Up to you guys. You tell me.
It would be helpful to have some
Context, yeah.
Yeah, context, but objective context. I mean, I only hear great things about him,
Yeah.
but I'd love to know
It's-
what's the practice? What are other, what do people do?
Maybe Bill Hurley. Poor Bill. He's
Yeah.
always going to every meeting in town
Yeah,
now.
and I think that's right. And Eric, didn't we get a ton of comments on this?
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
This was a real sticking point for the
Right.
last.
The
Yeah,
last,
so if it-
yeah, I was gonna
right,
say,
so-
the last charter revision, a lot of people,
commented, right?
a lot of people were not happy that this was, well,
removed.
Okay.
again,
Well,
and
Yeah,
again,
that kind of begs the question then that you should have probably
optics.
some representation here.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, can we also find out from HR if they've been looking for 6 years and haven't found anyone? That seems incredible.
sure.
That's just, yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
It's,
I mean, that's a wide net.
The
a
other
lot.
thought is if we were, is it Ms. Simpson? I'm not sure, from HR, that if we were to bring her in, then that could also be interesting testimony as it relates to the fire commission.
Right.
She provided very clear testimony in
police
that
too, right?
situation.
Okay.
I think it's more fire is my understanding on it. I
There's
think.
nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with the police commission. I can tell you that.
I think a lot of it's driven by just collective bargaining agreements. I think
No, I
there's
don't.
different
No,
situation there too.
Yeah.
But
Well, the police commission is relegated under the Police Accountability Act. It's a requirement. It's a little different.
Yeah.
Right. I think when I scan through those comments and you just see it, like I'm sure you guys do that too, you see the cluster of all the comments on one area, that's something we should be focusing.
It's a hot button, right?
Yeah, and
Right.
I mean, if Eric did an incredible job putting all that data together, I just think we need to bring those stakeholders in, especially give us context, because it's just so many differing opinions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris, to me, we might have to space it out a little bit in the meeting, but the DTW, professional engineering, the fire commission, and then the WPCA. I mean, from a boards and commissions perspective, I guess technically the DPW is on a board and commission, but the other two are really the big
Yeah, those are the big ones.
questions. Yeah, that we have to
100%.
address still.
All right, that sounds like
I agree
agenda.
with I agree with Eric.
I will ask Bucky to attend. I will ask Ms. Simpson, right? What's her first?
Yeah,
Kathleen
Kathleen Simpson.
Simpson? Thank you. And then maybe we can ask her some questions and then roll that into the fire commission and
Well,
pick her brain on that or any
Well,
other HR.
when we had the public hearing, the female individual who was on the fire
Miss
commission,
Brennan.
yeah, I
Yes.
think she's the chair now.
I think
I think she is. I'm
right.
not 100% sure. I don't know.
I think that's right.
Yeah, so we should.
I know it's a lady. I just don't know her name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But bring her in is your point, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, clearly there's some commentary around that to get her.
She sent
I
us
think
a comment too, I think recently.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
sent,
her
she sent an
biggest,
additional comment. That's
right.
correct.
One of her biggest issues was not having the chief having a requirement to be a resident in our town due to the cost to live in our town.
Yeah.
That was an overriding theme, both for the police chief as well.
And I would recommend that we when we talk kind of the fire and or police, we also address that same on whether the elector requirement or not
Yeah.
for the chiefs.
Yeah, it's a tough one. There's no doubt, especially.
We could
Good
pull on
talent.
a lot of threads with these three or
Yeah,
four.
you'll clean
Yeah.
up a big swath of the commentary in the public.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be a good chunk of information
Okay.
to get
Just
through.
going back to the engineering, I mean, since Bill Hurley is our current professional engineer and would know the need of the town for a
Mhm.
professional engineer, do we want to ask him to just explain from his perspective? Because Bucky is not, so he can't talk about what he can,
It wouldn't hurt.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Sure.
I hate asking to come to one more meeting though.
I'm sorry. How's your
Got
foot,
it.
by the way, Mary? I didn't ask you.
It's, well, I think I definitely broke my toe, but
Oh
moving on.
God, Mary, what are you doing?
I've done it before.
Oh God, don't say that, really.
Yeah, same
I hope
toe.
you, well, I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Okay, and so I think we've got an aggressive agenda for next time.
Yep.
I just wanted to share one other thing. I'm gonna, and I will send this out to everyone through email. With Commissioner Biagini resigning, and I had some discussions with the first selectman, and then I had some discussions with our secretary, and what I did was I put together a quick list. This is not complete. Sorry, I was going to make this. I was going to make this a real list and send it out today. I will send it out to all of you individually. But this is my list of stuff that I would, and this is how I characterize it. I would really be disappointed if we didn't get through this list. Right. I've run it by the secretary. We've had some comments. We've had some good back and forth comments. And there's a couple things that need to be clarified on here. But I showed it to Bill Kerber, and Bill said, if you get half that done, you'll be doing a good job, right? So but I think we've got to a point where maybe we need a punch list, and we can, so for example, what I did, and I did this just so we can, because I love making lists and then checking stuff off. We got through 2 things tonight, right? And I think these are really big things. WPCA. So what are we talking about? WPCA, I think, is huge. The residency requirement.
Yep.
The residency requirement. I mean, we can check off a lot of stuff here. And again, this is just my take on it. I want your comments. But I thought at this point, maybe we need a punch list. Help us drive to some conclusion. Because at some point, and this is Bill Gerber's comments to me, he goes, Chris, he goes, whatever you guys do, it's going to be better than we started. We can't, I don't want to make a list of 200 things and then say, oh, we didn't do what we want to do. I'd rather have this list of, I don't know, what's here, maybe 20. We get through 10 of these or 15 of these, I think we've done a world of good for changing the charter for the better. So I'll send this out to all of you.
Thanks for putting that together, Chair.
Directly. Again, I don't want this to be dictatorial. This is just my opinion, and I'll share our secretary's opinion too, because I think he has some really good input. But
okay,
maybe we just need this, the little help we need to get us over the hill here. So next time we can also discuss here, is there any desire to add meetings? Maybe we can 5-second discussion about this and come back to the next meeting. Next week is kind of a long putt for me, frankly. I don't know what you guys think. I know a lot of you are very busy, including myself. I don't even want to ask it. For next meeting, let's have a quick discussion about how we can add meetings, or if we want to add meetings, how many, and then we can talk about the adding a public.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Great meeting. I'm really happy with.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Everything went tonight. I feel kind of bad we didn't give Christine anything to walk away with, but
no.
But I tell you what, I appreciate her tenacity, because she said, she goes, I knew this wasn't going to be easy.
We said we would look into trying to augment some of the things that she pointed out, which were very good points.
Yeah.
And I think right, Commissioner Wackerman, I think that's what we said, and then we said that maybe we speak to the town attorney.
Absolutely.
So if you could put that on the agenda, I don't want to lose that, because somebody that dedicating so much of her time to the town and making such a contribution deserves, a little more consideration. In my humble opinion.
Agree. Okay. Public comment. Is there any? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Hoag, please.
No, I was waving goodbye. There's no public. We had Becky.
There's
I was
nobody out
just
there.
going to say, do we have anyone else online? I haven't checked in a few minutes. No, I
No,
guess not.
I don't see anybody, Commissioner, Chair.
Commissioner Hoag, do you have anything else?
No, I was just waving goodbye because there's no public to.
Oh, okay.
So I thought we were done. Well, we have to adjourn, I guess.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Yes.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Have a good night, everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
weekend.